Hindi na nagsalita, no?
Correct.
Ay, nag-lip sync lang. Hello.
Hi,
Happy
everyone.
Friday,
Aloha.
everyone! Yes!
Is it Friday? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, Eme.
Yes. But we want it to be a Friday. So we want it to be Friday every day.
Every day, of course.
Hi. Kumusta kayo, guys?
Hi.
Very much okay. Sure.
Groggy.
Hello.
Because I had my first dose yesterday. Kaya I could feel the after effects.
Congratulations.
My God, the
Yeah.
effects are real.
I know, it is real. Sa akin, it felt
How
like if you know a head cold, parang ganun yung feeling ko. Parang I'm in the borderline of a head cold. And hindi. Parang sinisinat sa ulo. Parang ganun.
Oh, talaga?
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Apart from that, are you experiencing anything like headaches or
Not
masakit ang
really.
balingkinitan?
No, it's just that this hurts a bit. Because that's where I got the injection. The vaccine.
True. Congratulations! I think halos lahat na sa atin, no? Nakapag-bakuna na talaga.
Yes.
Nice.
So sana tuloy-tuloy na, no? I think we're aiming for 70% this year. Tingnan natin. Sana magawa.
Sana kayanin.
Sana. Let's see. We hope. Hopefully they
True.
push. But they're all catering to A4 now, so at least it's going to be most of the population. The working class would have their vaccines by now.
Yeah. So let's all get vaccinated, everyone, if you get the chance. Please. Yes. Oh, let's say hi to some of our friends in the chat. Parang naninibago pa tayo sa
I know you're watching. Hey. I'm supposed to be the one who's bangag. I know you're watching. How are you guys doing? And we have another good friend, Alan Gonzaga. How are you?
Hey,
Yeah,
Alan.
Says sana all vaccinated. We also hope so. We hope so.
Yeah. Hey,
and also our good friend May. Hey, May. Happy Pride.
Hi.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride. Are you wearing your colors? Colors.
Yeah.
Ay, ganun ba?
Sino pa bang hindi natin na-hi?
Yeah, there's also Pauline.
Oh,
Hi,
yeah.
Pauline.
Hey, Pauline.
Hello. Salamat sa pagpunta at pagdaan.
Yes.
So may sinasabi talaga si Allen, di ba? Ready na naman din pag vaccinated na. So yun talaga yung priority natin, ano?
Very much.
Yes.
Huwag ka mag-alala, Allen, di ba? Sa college, yun naman yung plano.
Yes, and I know we're gonna go to college. I know the sights and the sounds there, so enjoy.
Correct. Don't worry. Sooner or later, ikaw yung hahabulin. Whoa! My God.
Yes.
And he's one talented person, so feeling ko habulin din siya.
Yes. Habulan ito.
Yes.
All right. I think Pietro is here as well, of course. Hi, Pietro.
Hi, Mahal.
You're Mahal.
Hey, Pietro.
Yes.
Yan. Saya natin. Sure.
I know. Mataas yung energy. Taasan pa natin. Hi, John.
Hi, John Spaghetti. Oh, John. That's the
From
John.
Manila, Philippines.
Mikey, you're asking which John? That's the John.
Huh?
Anyways, I think we're gonna be talking to John maybe, or he's gonna give away stuff. Yeah.
Hey.
Oh, hi, John. Right, and he's from Manila. Manila is doing really well in terms of vaccinating its citizens and also opening it up for non-residents. So good job.
Yep.
Yes.
I think that's it for now.
Yes. Bakit ba tayo nandito?
Yes. Yeah. Why are we exactly here?
Bakit ba tayo nandito? Wala lang. Trip lang namin.
Wala lang. Pero may magawa lang.
Yeah. But since it's Pride, I think we got ignited to search on our history because one of the biggest questions that we asked ourselves, because we hear a lot, especially during Pride, on the Western and American landscape of things from cinema, film. But what about the Philippine landscape? what was our history like? What was our cinema like? What was our film like during that time, or even
Right,
before Stonewall?
right,
Diba?
right. That's an interesting question though, kasi parang podcast. Sure.
Yes.
Ano tawag dito? Kasi we had our speed room session last year and we talked about representation in principle, right? We had Thais
Yeah.
over here, Direct Vince, and who was the other one? Sorry.
We
Si
had Renz
Direct
also from
Ren.
Kent
Direct
Avenue.
Vince as well, right? So we talked about representation or queer representation as a principle, right? Now
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna talk about history, right? Yun. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to look back. But ang question nga natin sa Twitter is, did we really ever lose our narrative to the point that we need to claim it back today? Diba?
I
So, siguro,
know.
diba? And well, it was actually jump started from this particular video YouTube I shared with you guys a group chat, no?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then that particular video talked about queer media, at least from the standpoint of the American pop culture. And
Mm-hmm.
parang it kind of like segued into the Filipino media, no? Parang wala masyadong content ang media on sa Filipino naman na side. So Lance
Yes.
here, ayan. Si Lance naman ang ating research associate. Dati si
I
Mikey
know.
talaga.
Kasi
So
I
ngayon,
got challenged by that prompt na
yeah.
why isn't there when you Google or YouTube
Mm,
queer representation in movies, you'd see a lot of resources when it comes to
yeah.
American media, Western media, European
Right.
media.
Yeah.
But
Uh-huh.
there's little content for the Philippines. I think I found one
Mm,
or two. And I'm
sad.
glad that I was able to find this
Cool.
doctorate thesis from
Mhm.
Mikey Inton Campbell.
Uh-huh.
And she's based in New Zealand now. But
Wow.
she did this for Hong Kong, for the Lignan University. And the
Mm,
title of the thesis was Ang Bakla and the Silver Screen. So
nice.
Mm.
it's an in-depth look on that. And when I read it, this was exactly what I was looking for.
Mm,
I
mhm,
hope,
mhm.
and that inspired, I think, more that we should be able to do this. We should share what we've learned through that thesis
Yeah.
to a broader market. And we are
Yeah.
not experts in cinema and film, but we do love cinema and film. So we're
Correct.
just sharing some of the things that we've learned in the thesis and some things that we know as reviewers as well.
That's right, that's right. And by the way, yung research department namin sa BPS nag-expand na po, no? So si Mikey,
Yes.
yung head namin, meron na po tayong associate, si Lance Lucas. So eventually,
Yes.
kami na po lahat mag-research. No? Charot
Actually,
lang.
Mm-hmm.
actually co-head. Medyo iba
Co-head,
lang yung
yeah.
ano.
Yeah.
Oo.
Interdisciplinary studies. Ganun.
Yes!
Yes. True, so true.
Yes, yes. Diba? Who doesn't love research? Ang daming content,
So
ha? I
true.
mean,
Oh,
That's so
totoo.
true.
In Google, super dami. So, siguro just to jumpstart everyone, siguro I have a question even to those in chat or friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'd like to engage you guys, right? What's the most recent gay Filipino film or series that you've recently watched? Recent. Sure.
Recent or the LGBT, that's Brothers Landscape, LGBT plus film series
Yeah.
you watched.
Yes. Ano yung isang pelikula na yun? Oo.
Filipino
Re-
film.
or
Film. If
ano
it's
ba? Film na tumatak ba or
film.
talagang recent lang na napanood?
Oh, let's try both then.
Let's say
Mhm.
both. Oo.
Let's try both.
Okay.
The one that's recent and the one that had an impact on you.
Okay. Okay. Sige. Isip tayo.
May mahirap yung tanong na yan kasi parang kung recent Filipino film, marami rin ano. Kasi,
Yeah.
oh my God.
I
Tapos
know.
wala ako naisip.
The question is, where do we start? Where do we start? Kasi most of the landscape now I'm consuming are all in series form, in TV series form or web
Correct.
series forms
Right.
na.
That's
So we
right.
had Stuck on You by Ride or Die. But when it comes to cinema, after the shift, I think the most recent I've seen was I have three on top of my head. Mamu,
Okay.
Metamorphosis,
Yes.
and so I remember them watching them in a clump, in a big chunk. I watched them all together. Mamu, Metamorphosis, and Rainbow Sunset. Those are the three that I
Oh my
remember.
Oh,
god.
Rainbow Sunset. Yes.
Oh my god.
Ang dami
Because
kasi.
they're three different stories. Metamorphosis is an intersex story. Mamu is a
Mhm.
Yeah.
transsexual, a trans story, and Rainbow
Mhm. Mhm.
Sunset is more into a different age group. It's a multi-level
Right.
story.
Mhm. Mhm. Wait, but this
Oh,
is sad
so
though. Yeah, go Mickey.
go ahead. No, I was just saying that Jude echoed,
Metamorphosis.
yeah, Metamorphosis. And
Right.
Alit Marl, hi, says
Hi.
Wakao.
Ah, yes, Wakao by Eddie
Wow.
That's the
Garcia
one with Eddie
Yeah.
Garcia,
and the
yes. I
dog.
think it was in the film festival. Yeah,
Yes,
right.
it was.
Galing.
Oh yeah, we
Yes,
forgot. There's also the boy foretold by the stars.
Oh,
oh my
oh.
God,
The boy
yes.
foretold by
Nakalimutan talaga natin. Sure.
no,
Grabe, no?
they were all together. I think they were all clunked in one year.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. Yes, Nico, you were saying something.
Yeah.
Nakalimutan ko na talaga. Sure. Ano tayo? Eme. Oy, wait lang. Mag-hi muna tayo kay Z. Hi, Z.
Hi Z.
Hi,
What's
Z.
up? Yes. Ako, I'm trying to recall kasi Diyos ko, mga ilan-ilan na rin napanood ko. Pero you know what? What really stood out to me right now, mag-hi muna tayo sa ating friend. Hi, Maki Ruth. Ayun, nawala siya bigla. Ayun.
Hello. Sorry,
Hi
I'm late.
Maki.
Gusto mo yon?
Hi, Maki.
Oh,
Gusto ko yun.
we're in that bago na yung happy. We're in the house na may frame na may gold.
I'm in my parents'
In a
house.
different house.
Ah, talaga.
Yes.
Uy, wait lang. May dumagdag pa si Ange.
Yes. I love it. Hi Anne.
Oh my
It's
God.
raining and it's a
Hi,
chaos in here.
Ange.
Oh my God.
Hi,
Saan ka ba
Ange.
ngayon?
Girl.
May tulo sa ano ko kaya naglinis ako.
Oh no.
Hello guys.
Hello,
Alright, nice to have you,
Hey.
Ange. It's been so long.
I know.
Oh. Ang fresh mo naman, te. Diyos ko, nahiya naman ako sa balat
Correct,
mo.
nakaka-envy.
Oo nga ako din. Galing pa ako sa labas.
Si Mark.
Yeah.
Joke.
Uy, sorry. Sinasabi rin pala ni Anlet Marl, hello, Stranger the Movie. Oh my God, ang dami natin nakakalimutan.
Oh my
Yes.
God, bakit
Oh my God.
And I think kasi we're clustering them into series and we forget that they have movie counterparts then.
Yeah.
Right, that is so
Oh.
true.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So-
what was the question?
Ayan. What was the most impactful and the most recent LGBT plus Philippine movie you watched
Either
Oh.
or.
or seen?
Habang nag-iisip kayo, si John, ang sabi niya, Ned's Project. I'm not familiar.
My
I'm not
gosh.
familiar with that project.
Local to, John. Can you tell us?
Is it Pinoy?
Yeah. Is that Pinoy? I'm not familiar kasi.
Me neither.
Pero siguro, since somebody mentioned it already, I think, yes, The Boy Foretold by the Stars, number one, because I think it was one of those films that were sort of like accepted by the mainstream. Kasi, number one, it was featured in MMFF, right?
Yeah.
And it was sort of like distributed on a popular platform. And also because yung petit, nabida talaga yung mga petit.
Yes.
Kasi usually you would have mask for mask. What do you call that? Pairings.
Yes.
Or this one, it was
Yes.
sort of like here's the jock and the athlete, and then here's the petite. And then Hello Stranger, I think I mentioned this in our review.
Yeah, Hello
Na parang
Stranger was
it's
Yes.
right kasi it felt sort of like Dasha Popoy levels, at least for the gay community. Kasi parang we've never had something as close to Popoy and Dasha as for me lang as Hello
Yes.
Stranger. Of course, there could be others upcoming in the future, or there may be others that I'm not familiar with because I haven't seen them. Pero I felt na parang eto yung pwedeng itapat doon sa kind of romance level. So yeah.
Yeah, according to Jude and John, Ned's Project is a 2016 Philippine independent LGBT movie starring Anjali Bayani. And her role is she's a lesbian who has harbored a desire to have a baby. So yeah. And it was featured nung
I did.
pista ng pelikulang Pilipino. So it was during that year too. 2016, I think, to be exact.
Oh,
but I remember,
okay.
I remember Jude was talking about it, and he was sharing the link, how to register. And
Yes.
during that
Yeah.
time, I think that was last year, they were hosting like watch parties. They were, parang,
Yes, I
ito po,
remember that.
ganon. So yeah, I remember. Okay, you guys, what's your gay movie?
Do you already have a movie in mind?
Actually, the most recent, I guess, that I've watched na LGBT film. It's not Filipino, but I recently like rewatched actually some episodes of Glee. And then I remember I was really rooting for ano nga ba yung name niya? Nakakatawa ka
Kurt?
pero nakalimutan
Kurt
ko.
Hummel
No,
or
the two cheerleaders.
Oh,
Ako sabi sa kanila
Santana. Or the
Santana
Santana.
yeah,
And Britney S. Spears.
Brittany, yeah. Tapos naalala ko lang, oh my God, parang sila pala yung parang pinaka-first na shinip ko na LGBT couple, I guess. Kasi ngayon, parang na-refresh yung memory ko na parang, oh my God, they're so cute. So, yun. Rest in peace, Naya Rivera.
Yes.
Yun yung naalala ko. And I think, yeah, mainstream kasi yung Glee. So, very, parang nung panahon na pala yun, medyo na mainstream na rin yung mga LGBT themes sa mga teenagers. So, it's nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Ako, I have 3.
Thanks. Go.
Shoot.
The first one is Too Cool to Be Forgotten.
Oh, that, yes.
Yeah.
So
siguro sa top 3 ko, yun yung third place. Too Cool to Be Forgotten. Second would be Rainbow's Sunset, if you're familiar with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the first one is Metamorphosis. Parang, ang iba kasi impact sa akin na Metamorphosis, especially na it's parang since we are clamoring and since we're championing stories of LGBTQIA+, so parang siya yung isa sa mga kwento na tinalakay niya yung mga somehow forgotten or left behind or set aside stories ng spectrum kasi we're so used to celebrating lesbian rights, lesbian love, boys love, ganyan. So yun, parang hindi pa ako nakakakita ng iba pang stories na as beautifully told for the intersex community. So, yeah. Kaya masyadong malaki yung impact sa akin ng Metamorphosis. And also, Changing Partners.
Yes, Changing Partners.
Yes.
I have a very interesting story for Changing Partners. Oh my God. Since kasi it was shown in 2019, I think. 2018, 2019. Tapos hindi ko siya napanood nung time na yon. So parang, tapos nung the following year, it was a Cinema One original, di ba? Nung nagkaroon ng time na Cinema One nga ba or or Cinemalaya. I forgot which festival. Pero the following year, shinow siya ulit alongside the current lineup for that particular year, 2020, 2019, I forgot. Yun. So, I bought a pass, parang festival pass for specific movies. Tapos isa siya sa pinili ko. Then, do you know the parang it's a new mall sa malapit sa office where I'm at. Sa may Ayala Manila Bay. Tapos, di ba walang tao doon? Walang masyadong tao. Walang laman, walang anything. Nung nanood ako lang yung laman. Sadly, ako lang yung laman ng cinema. It's the last full show. Ako lang yung laman. Parang part of me is, parang siyang medyo melancholic kasi parang I'm somehow happy na at least they pursued talaga to, they show the movie kahit ako lang mag-isa. But at the same time, it's kind of sad na hindi nabibigyang atensyon yung mga gantong klaseng pelikula ng mga tao. Parang, I don't know if it's because of there is not much, parang audience or like there's not much attention to audience Or is it because of the location? Kasi bago yung mall at wala talagang tao yung mall na yun. So yun, parang ano lang. May parang nasad lang ako na sana yung mga gantong klaseng pelikula mas mayroong audience para kasi they need money to make another film, to make new content and to produce new movies that we will enjoy and share our stories moving forward. So yun lang.
Yes.
Awesome. Yes. Kasi nag-research
hopefully they will hopefully they'll be able to stage it because I want to see it as a play,
again.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen clips of it as a play, and it was beautiful, and I hope I could watch it live as a play then.
Same. I think iba ang magiging kwento, no? Ay, iba ang experience pag nasa entablado. Kasi,
it's different. It's way different.
Immersive, mas engaging.
Oh my gosh. Mahirap
and
yun,
for those who haven't watched Changing Partners, it's literally telling all the algorithms of different love stories in one movie. So it concerns 4 people, and they keep on shifting.
True.
They keep on changing partners.
They keep on changing partners, but it's just tackling two. Like it's like there's 2 identities for Angel. If I remember the names, Angel and
Agot, and I forgot the others.
Of the 2 main casts. So their names are also non-binary in a sense that there's no gender specifications in the name, so they could be interchanged.
Ang husay nun, grabe. Wait, pero hindi ko ma-imagine. Oo. Hindi ko ma-imagine sa entablado yun kasi isang character lang yun eh, di ba? Tapos dapat sa ulado mo yung linya, pag-shift, yung character ka na.
And how to do it on
At least
stage.
That's gonna be a challenge for the actor.
Yeah.
So sabi ni Jude, there might be a part 2. So changing part 2. Shut up.
Changing part 2.
And
because I think the part 2 might concern you. Remember, there's this friend of the younger person that he or she keeps hanging out with. So we would find out who that person is. Maybe in the part 2. Maybe.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Uy, Jude, next time pag sinage siya, sama tayo.
True.
Yes.
Sabay tayo. Ang net Marcos, parang nakakatakot manood na mag-isa sa sinehan. Baka may kasama ka na, di mo na...
Oh my God.
Actually, mas prefer ko yung may kasama ko pero hindi ko nakikita. Kesa sa...
Oh my God.
Di ba, nakikita mo pero hindi mo kasama.
I cannot.
I asked the volunteer of Cinema One or yung staff to samahan niya ako sa loob ng sinehan. As in, I really asked him. Tapos nandun siya sa baba. Literally, sinamahan niya ako sa loob.
That's nice.
That's cute.
That's nice.
Tapos I asked them pa kung pwede bang... kasi ako, I don't mind naman if hindi patay lahat ng ilaw. So, iniwan nilang open yung light sa pinakalikod. So, para lang hindi ako... Nakakatakot
kasi. Di ba usually may light sa may CR?
Depends sa cinema.
Depends. Pero sa cinema kasi na yun, wala. Parang ang may light lang is yung sa stairs, yung LED lang na ganun. Wala siya sa wall. So, I asked them to turn on the light. Pumayag naman sila.
Mama, parang ikaw yung may-ari ng sinehan.
Correct.
VIP
na VIP, Correct.
Block screening for 200 pesos.
Yes.
Iba. Diyos ko. Uy, nahirapan ako sa question, ha? Ako yung nagtatanong-tanong, pero nahirapan akong sumagot. Sure.
Yeah. So what is your answer?
Ako, actually, the first thing that came to mind was Daybreak, 2008.
Ooh,
this was,
Coco and Martin.
And Paulo Rivero. Bakit?
Why?
Totoo yan. Awakening star.
Exactly, Mikey.
True.
Super. As in, gustong-gusto ko siya kasi makatotohanin. Alam mo yung pantasya mo. Alam mo yung, kasi in reality it happens eh. In reality it happens, diba? Kasi bankero si Coco Martin and doktor si Paulo Rivero dito eh. Or lawyer ba? Hindi ko na matanda. Basta professional. And then, The reason that it's called Daybreak, it's a play with words eh. Kasi 'di ba daybreak as in araw, day, and then break as in broken, right? Pero I think it was there was like some sort of analysis to this na it's actually an interplay or a play with they break as in they broke up as in they break.
They
Kaya siya naging daybreak.
Okay.
So may ganung ano, dun ako natawa na parang nag-stick siya sa akin. And then the ending also is not really happy. I mean, they just went out there in I don't know, parang it was an ambiguous ending. Hindi mo alam kung nag-break ba sila talaga. Basta they
Yeah.
just went on with their lives. And to me, that's sad. The sad reality of, gay relationships. And napakita siya doon. Diba? Simple lang na. Kasi talagang lumuwas sila eh. Diba? Parang bangkero si
Yeah.
Coco Martin and then Paulo Rivera was this professional, ganyan. So, awakening kasi siya para sa akin. No? So, yun yung unang natandaan ko talaga. Secondly, uy, ang jologs nito, pero hindi siya pelikula, serye talaga siya.
Which is
My Husband's Lover.
Uy,
yeah.
Uy, grabe
No,
talaga.
it's good kasi it's one of the series that introduced that concept in
Right.
Philippine media.
Exactly.
It was impactful.
It was impactful kasi it was bold enough to like show to everybody pa ang lakas ng loob ng writer, ha?
Yeah.
Tsaka ng GMA. Oh my God, I really applauded them. Tapos sinubaybayan ko talaga yun, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Ako din. And
Diba?
all of the actors were good.
Were
Even
good.
Carla. Yeah, ang galing.
Uy, si Carla
Akala ko
talaga. As
sabihin
in,
mo,
I
all
would
the actors were good looking.
also,
Yun din.
True naman.
That too.
Yun din.
that too. Uy, pero ano, I don't know. Diyos ko, basta sa akin, My Husband's Lover talaga. Parang, napanatag yung loob ko because of My Husband's Lover na parang, oh my gosh, may future ang Pilipinas pagpapakita ng, alam mo yun, ang ganong content. Kasi ang lakas ng loob ng GMA. Sabi ko, I GMA, I applaud you. And then, hindi siya MM kwento lang, ha? Just,
May laman eh. May laman talaga siya.
oo.
Yeah, and it didn't stop. After that, you had more coming.
Right.
Rich Man's Daughter, Destiny Rose. So there was even more coming.
Tuloy siya. And I forget the name of the writer, Dr. Lero. That's the last name, I think, no? So, ayun, sa akin, si My Husband's Lover. And recently, Mamu. Because
And the mother too.
and the mother too. Tunto ako doon. It's a sad story, but but the tone was not sad. Alam mo yun yung mix na yun.
Yeah, it's enriching eh yung pag pinanood mo yung Mamu. Parang every opportunity on how the story unfolds is an opportunity for you to learn as a viewer.
Correct.
Diba? And
Exactly.
parang ano siya eh, akala mo ang lawak na ng kaalaman mo about the community pero hindi pa pala talaga eh. Ano yun, ang dami pang lesson, di ba?
Yeah. It's sad in a sense we're seeing the harsh realities that they have to live in, but enlightening in a way that they're still fighting like us.
Exactly. In a way, parang nalulungkot ako. But at the same time, I was kind of inspired na parang, my gosh, ikaw nga, hirap na hirap, pero patuloy ka pa rin sa buhay mo at may gana ka pang maging nanay. Parang, oh my gosh, Mamu. Yes, Mamu.
Yes.
Oh.
It just shows that we have so much love to give even though we think otherwise.
Exactly. Kaya maganda siya. Yun yung natatandaan ko. Yes.
Yes.
Wait, just to
and even got more.
Nico said.
Yeah, go.
Yeah.
In terms of awakening talaga, aaminin ko na talaga, yung mga indie films.
Yes.
Talaga.
That era.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Napaka-impact
Super.
sa akin yung mga
Same.
Kasal.
kasi to the point na parang
Kasal?
guilty pleasure siya because diba, parang guilty pleasure siya kasi you wanna watch it but then you have to sort of like hide alam mo yun, the fact that you're watching it parang oh my God
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, I just wanna say hi to RMP. RMC says, Kapitayo, hi, thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for coming.
And we have entries from we also have entries from our other chatters. Nomio is saying,
Nomio
oh my God, Eric Kizon.
Oh my God.
We were just talking about that earlier, di ba?
Yes.
Gusto naman talaga, oh my God. And
Metamorphosis and Die Beautiful. Muli. With Sid Lucero and Koji Domingo.
Ang lihim ni Antonio.
And ang lihim ni Antonio.
Oh my God. Lihim ni
Antonio
Antonio.
Dalihim.
Oh my God.
Or Antonio's Secret.
Josh
So let's
Ivan
see.
Morales. Oh my God. Just
Yes.
awakening.
Very.
Awakening to the man.
Yes. Super.
Mhm.
And then in my life, I haven't seen this yet. In my life with JLC. Oh, Lucky
Yeah.
Manzano and ano.
Yes.
John
Yeah.
Lloyd.
Yes.
Alright.
John Lloyd Cruz. Yes.
Yes. And
Hi,
finally,
brother.
BRI.
Hi,
Hi,
brother.
brother.
Hello, brother.
And Panty
Fantasy.
Panda
Sisters.
Sisters.
Let's not forget. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Rainbow
Wait, Sisi,
Sunset.
my
Rainbow
entry.
Sunset.
Yeah.
Rainbow Sunset. Oh my
Ayan,
God, this is
talaga-
another awakening movie.
Wait, I'm
Ang
Not
lalaki
this
sorry.
one.
Sagwan!
Sa Parola, Sagwan.
Sagwan.
And Lihis.
Lihis.
Sagwan.
Mhm.
Sagwan. Hello.
That's an
I
era.
cannot.
Oh
Sagwan,
my God.
come
Diyos
on.
ko.
Alam mo, nung pinanood ko yung Sagwan, parang gusto kong bumiyahe ng Laguna Ret. Tapos magbabangkera Quezon. Or lang.
By the way, because Nomeo mentioned ang lalaki sa parola, so there was also ang lalaki sa buhay ni Celia. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay na
So,
ako.
okay.
That's it, guys. Thank you for watching.
No, but seriously,
Wait,
yeah.
yes, this one as
Yes.
well.
He
June.
who is without sin. Yep.
That's correct. Ang dami na, oh.
Mhm.
Diba?
There's a lot. There is a lot.
Yes. So ang tanong, did we ever lose our narrative in history? Para sabihin natin, we need to own
Laban.
our narrative now. Ganyan, eme. Diba? So yun yung sasagutin natin tomorrow. Charot lang. Tonight.
No, next week. Next week with our next panelist.
Yeah. Initin lang pala, no? Share ko na balance.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's why we're going back to history. And we're going to look even way, way before film was even started. Because I think they're part of our narrative, but I'm still waiting for Nico to load it. But because they were oral narratives in a way. They were told through word of mouth. They were told as stories. And now they're considered as folklore. And some of the narratives that we know may not exist pa or have been erased, kumbaga. And next one na, Nico.
Next one na.
Yes.
Lakas maka-presentation sa conference na to. Next, please.
Of course. So we're going to go deep into our old history and belief systems and history. So you see 4 pictures there. So what do you think of the 4 pictures? What comes into mind when you see these pictures?
Babaylan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The babaylan. And we also have the pintados. We also have a zither player and we also have a lesbian writer. And some of them are untold stories. Like the zither player is actually trans in their old context. And the one above is Diwata, who can transform into a man. And the one below just shows that during an olden times, there was a relationship there was a same-sex relationship going on.
Oh.
Yes. And we're gonna go dig deeper to the next slide. Slide talaga. Conference na to. There. And I think you've seen these photos around social media. And that's a reinterpretation of who Lacapati is. Lacapati is a known Tagalog god of field water, especially the goddess of fertility. Also, she's the deity of vagrants and the way, or the lost and abandoned, the homeless and neglected. And the one thing about Lacapati is she was our first intersex god or goddess in a way. And it was way, way, way back then. She existed. And the epicene is what we call Bathala. And during their time, the Bathala concept was all-seeing, all-knowing, genderless in a way. So unlike now, they put Bathala into more of the masculine sphere because the Spaniards came, so they had to assimilate that construct on Bathala.
Wait, that's interesting.
It happens. In order for it to be easier for us to be colonized by the Spaniards. Right. And the same happened with the Babaylans, the Binukot, the Catalonans, or in other languages, they're called the shamans, or they are our divine healers. They are the divine priestesses during our time. And we had two famous people. It was one of the many, Tapar and Elofre. And for those who don't know who they were two Kabaylan who fought during the Spanish period. So even then, they were fighting for their rights. Because for the Spaniards who came in, they thought our culture was weird. Because for the Austronesian culture, we didn't assimilate the gender with the genitals. If you get that. As long as you do the gender roles of a certain community, you would be considered as a woman. You'd be considered as a man. Let's say during that time, being a priestess, being a shaman, for some of their customs and regions of the Philippines, it was divinely or placed with a woman's role. So if there is someone from the third gender, as they used for the Austronesian cultures, who could fit that role, he would have to study on becoming on the woman's role, on how to do the shamanistic process, the processes, and all the other aspects of becoming a true woman or becoming a woman, the womanhood.
Nice.
From everything, from the clothes to all, and it's their choice if they want to. Parang for them, they didn't have to change the genitals then because it was more defined by their roles and how they look like. Parang kumbaga sexuality and gender was different, was two different things, was separate.
So in a way, we can also say that it wasn't exactly what sex you were born with, but it was more of your gender expression.
Or your gender expression, your role in the community. Because it also worked the other way. Like there were, in the lack of warriors, there were some women who were trained to fight like men.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Gabriela silang was a fighter, diba?
Yes. And they had to it's also rich in our folklore that appears too. And in one of the local languages or local customs, we have this term called mente fuwale. Beg me for the correct pronunciation, but it's an old language, and it comes from the Teduray tribe. And that mente fuwale means transformation in their language. And when they add that word with libon, which means man, and lagay, which means woman, ibig sabihin, they accept the term na there is transformation happening during that period.
Wow. Okay.
And we have that term already even before.
Diba?
Even before trans men and women,
yes.
diba? Meron ng transformation term.
Man and transformation woman.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Alam mo, ito talaga, no? This is
diba?
pre-Hispanic days, no? Tama ba?
Yes. It is pre-Hispanic days.
Ito talaga mga Kastilang to, panira, and char lang.
I think it just highlights the fact that, di ba, parang sinasabi nga lagi na history is written by the victors, di ba?
Yeah.
So the mere fact na the Spaniards were the one who sort of like colonized us, and they became sort of like our, what they call that, suppressors. So they were able to also rewrite the narrative. Right. So I guess, and I don't know, I'm not a historian, but it may have been possible that they may have destroyed any type of literature related to previous practices because they wanted only for Christianity to be sort of like the main religion. So, syempre, for you to be able to, let's say, substitute one person's religion or culture with another, you would have to supplant that with either new images, new history, new practices. But also you would have to destroy anything that relates to that previous history. No.
Right.
Yeah. And the destruction, that's where the aswangs came about in a way.
Oh,
they turned our babaylans into the aswang or the creatures of the dark.
Right.
They vilified them into that.
Right.
Which was a really bad scene. In American history, in American cinema pure history, you'd see the trans community turned into villains, diba? Ours happened way, way, way before. It happened during the Babaylanic periods.
Lance,
and it's that old.
Lance, baka naman, for those of you watching, if you've heard or read Babaylan, kasi ginagamit siya sa sa Becky lingo, na ang babaylan ibig sabihin babae. Alam mo yun, pag ginagamit siya. So,
Yes.
let's clarify, what is babaylan? Ano ba ibig sabihin ng babaylan? Just to make it clear with everyone.
Yeah, in this context, so Bailan is a shaman or the priestess.
Shaman or priestess, okay.
They
Right.
have different roles in their own communities. They not only are they priestesses, but they are also yung mga doctors who would perform
Yes.
rituals. So kapag halimbawa mayroong mga members of the community na may sakit, sa kanila lalapit, and at the same time kapag halimbawa mayroon silang mga feudal system kasi before, may mga feud with other tribes, with other communities. Kapag may mga wounded sa kanila lumalapit, at the same time kapag halimbawa since we really cannot take it away pa din naman kasi na hindi at par with what we have right now in the modern world, yung level of yung healing, for example, like hindi scientific masyado yung approach, which we totally get, because this is in a historical context. Kapag merong mga hindi unfortunately namamatay ganyan, sa kanila din lumalapit to cleanse their soul, so that they will be worthy of they will be worthy of ascending to the higher being, parang ganon. Their roles are very much essential for their own community, and at the same time one doesn't, parang if you want to be a babaylan, you cannot be a babaylan just because you want it. Meron siyang criteria that they follow. They have 5 steps that they follow. This is me going to my college days, so bear with me. Mga ilang years ko na din siya.
I'm listening.
Diba? They should dream of a black chicken. Kasi may mga ganun silang context. Parang pag napanaginipan mo yung black chicken na nakikipaglaban, tapos naduguan, mga ganyan. Parang you pass the first step on what it requires to be a babaylan or a Catalonan. And another would be you need to heal one that would be based on the description or based on what is accepted in that community, that person is healed by you. So that's another one. So may daming mga steps that they have to follow, and especially one added step siguro for those born male who want to be a babaylan is that they should act the way as a woman does in culturally before. They have to dress as a woman, they have to walk as a woman, they have to express themselves as a woman, they have to grow their hair and everything. So so it's really interesting on how interesting in historical context, but it's kind of destructive on how when the Spanish came, they vilified our babaylans as someone who is because it doesn't really fit their standards.
Witches.
Because since
diba,
witches, parang it doesn't fit
Monsters.
their standards on what it is to be someone who should be revered in the community, which for them should be a male, since mas madami pa rin talagang babaylan yung babae. So hindi siya tugma yung practices natin before compared to the practices that they want us to have when they came here. So they are very successful in their context. They are very successful in changing and shifting our culture in total 180. Because right now, hundreds of years after, we still carry their teachings and the stigma of that males are higher beings than women. And actually, kasi before the Spaniards came, wala tayong notion of third sex, diba? Kung if you identify yourself as a woman and you want to be a babaylan, then you will be categorized into the women's side of the spectrum, parang ganon. If you want to identify yourself as a warrior and you present yourself as a male, you can go to that other side of the other side of the spectrum. So hindi talaga tinitignan yung gender as something na questionable or something na dapat tignan as something negative, kasi mataas yung reverence natin sa babae. Parang if there will be an instance kung maglalagay man tayo quote and quote, kung maglalagay man tayo ng hierarchy of sexes, nasa taas talaga yung babae. Kasi
it goes in our rhyme scheme. Remember, there's an old rhyme when we play girl, boy, bakla, tomboy. The girl is the first. I'm not joking. It's also part
I
of the
know, I
thesis.
know.
But
I
it's
just
funny,
never thought
diba?
of it that way.
That's the
Yeah.
hierarchy, unfortunately. That's
Yeah.
the yun yung game na
Interesting.
yun. Diba?
And
Yeah.
if we talk about, diba, parang how we refer to, let's say, Earth, it's always Mother Earth, right?
Yeah.
Diba? So parang, yun talaga eh, very ano. And
Father Earth.
medyo
Yeah.
weird.
It depends on the cultures. Like, kasi, like there could be cultures wherein the warriors are female, so it
Uh-huh.
interchanges. So as long
Right.
as it's just that during that time, gender roles were fluid in a way.
Exactly.
Parang you just have to shift towards what the gender roles that they had existing during that time.
Mm.
Mm.
And
Mm-mm.
also it's also impacted also in relationships. Parang a
Mm-mm.
babaylan could carry, especially the one who transformed or transitioned into a female, could carry a male counterpart or male partner.
Mm.
But that person, I think I've read some texts na they could be considered asexual as well during
Mm-mm.
that time. They could be celibate, but they're asexual. If you get
Oh,
yung ganon.
interesting.
So it existed during that time, and the Spaniards felt it was weird, or the colonizers felt it was weird. Parang
Mm-mm.
why aren't why? Because during that time, I think when they came over, the feudal system was like you get married or to claim land. Ours was a marriage for companionship,
Right, right.
and it was a marriage, and for them before it was a marriage to keep the bloodline intact, to
Mm-mm.
populate and to keep the land in our bloodline. Ours was like, okay, you're not my partner anymore. I get another one. And there was strength in the women's companionship modes, wherein they were the ones picking the men.
Yes, girl.
That's why
Girl
hence there's
power.
ligaw. That's girl power na ligawan mo ko. Date court me. Parang ganun yung dating nun.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
And it comes to shifting, and one of the major heroes before who became a curse word was nagmamalitong yawa. You've heard the yawa term in
Yeah.
Bisaya,
Yes,
but she's
yes.
a
Yawa.
fierce
It's a
priest. I
name.
think she's a yeah, diba? Nagmamalitong yawa because she was kumbaga, she was like she was a binukot or one of the babaylans then. But in order to
Okay.
save the person she loved, she
Uh-huh.
had to become a warrior, and she was
Uh-huh.
named Buyong Sumasakay. So she transformed,
Oh,
kumbaga, into a male figure whenever she
okay.
goes into warrior state.
Interesting.
And the reverse, and nakakatawa rin, if you go to another one, since here are the etymology of our words, if you
Yes.
go to the other name, it's called Ladalad Amadali.
Uh-huh.
And we have Ladlad also, and we have a
Right.
Ladlad the book. Ladalad naman
Mm-hmm.
was a male hero, but
Mm-hmm.
he had to transform into a female, or had to embody the female counterpart because he needed to use the shamanistic rituals. He needed to summon the spirits. He needed to fight another shaman or priestess to save the people that he loved.
Mm.
Oh my God. Magical
Diba?
warfare. Oh my
Oh my
God.
Yep.
gosh. Grabe talaga.
Yeah, and it's like what Trece is doing now, that combination of a baylang mandirigma. I think that's the latest pop culture reference.
Right.
That makes sense. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Nice.
And the after effects we'll see on the next slide. That's a bit of the Philippine history.
I like that.
Ayun, and
Okay.
this is where the era of conversion, resistance, sexuality aside came in. And I think
Mm.
if you've seen the titles, I think one title that rose above all of it is Jack and Jill. Next slide na lang, Nico. By Dolphy and Lolita Rodriguez. And Jack and
Okay.
Jill they're siblings in that story, in that movie. And Lolita's character, which is she wanted her brother to convert into what was the systemic norm. But the Dolphy's
Mhm.
character was more into the feminine side. And hence, I think Lolita's character said this line that you see there. It says, pusong babae yan, wala tayong magagawa. Parang he has the heart of a woman, we can't do anything about it.
Okay.
Because at the end of the movie, regardless of how many times he has tried, he would still fall into the feminine place, and it shows the same babaylanic resistance that our four people had. Na regardless of what system you push into me, I will still fight. I will still see myself as this, and I will not beg. I will not bow down. I may follow for a while. I'll try your gender role, but I'll still go back to who I am.
That's beautiful.
But the bad side naman of this was there's two bad sides of this though. Because with Lolita's story, you'd see that her end would follow the same straight heteronormative norm, wherein she would have to have a husband at the end. Parang she may be physically tomboyish, she may be acting like a guy driving a jeepney, but at the end of the movie, she gets married to a guy. And also, I think this was a start wherein, you know that concept, I think we had an interview before wherein one of the lesbians said na they are usually portrayed as evil or killers. Unlike in American cinema, hindi. For us, I think it started here because her role, Lolita, was punching and stabbing a man. She was throwing down a man as if she was a fierce warrior. I think that's the enter point in cinema. And also on the flip side naman, we also see the vaudeville zarzuela culture of comedy, that slapstick comedy wherein if you've seen these stooges, yung binabatukan sa ulo, yung they're getting hit as a punching bag. And since Dolphy's background comes from that environment, from that era, he brought that along with his character. Hence, we also have images of our people from our community being bashed, being thrown at, and it's okay to them because they became a joke.
Okay.
They became the end of that vaudeville performance, kumbaga.
Grabe, no?
Diba? So that's the 50s. I think that was one of the highlight movies of the 50s. It's Jack and Jill by 1954. And we move on to the 60s naman. And it's still Dolphy's period because Dolphy is a really well-known actor, a comedy actor, comedy king, because he was able to transform himself into what he wants to be, regardless of what role he was thrown at. And we had movies like Kankarorots and Susana Daldal.
OMG, movie pala yun.
Yes.
Okay.
Revelation.
I love it.
Yes.
I-remake na yan.
Remake na
Yes,
yan.
please.
Oh.
I know. And it's the rise of the flamboyant queen with dimensions. Oh, yeah, by the way, I forgot to quote. Yung the one before, if you noticed then, yung 50s, we weren't sexualized yet as a being. Parang it was just more of your identity. There was no hint of sex. And it goes on with this too. Na it's not who they go with, it's more of their expression and identity.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think one highlight film is, on the next slide, you'll see the most famous, Pacifica Falayfay. And I think the gay term for Pamaypay is Falayfay. Because that's when it started that associated the fan with a gay symbol. Because we know also culturally that it's being used in courtship for the Maria Claras. When there's a fan art to that of Cortez and London. Yes.
Yes.
And rough story of Pacifica Falayfay, they're a sibling of 5, and the mother just wanted to have a girl. Hence, Pacifica or Pacifico became the girl. So they practically raised Pacifico into a girl. So the mother dressed him into all of that, and later on, she identifies herself as Pacifica. But as the story goes on, you'd listen to the narrative na the mother at the end, before she dies, wants Pacifico to become Pacifico again. So he won't get the same struggle as the others.
Oh.
Pero
And
guys,
then,
question did, especially for the guys, were you all like dressed as girls when you were younger by your relatives or your parents? No.
I didn't have that experience.
Sometimes that happens. No.
Sometimes it happens. But I didn't have that experience though. How about the people on the live then? Have they had that experience?
may ganun akong experience talaga. Alam mo yung pinsan ko babae, ewan ko ba doon? Diyos ko, alam mo yung pang Margarette na costume na ganyan. Huludoy, dinadamitan talaga ako.
Majorette, mama.
Margarette.
Iba yun.
Sige,
Iba rin
Margarette.
yun.
Margarette Barrette. Charot lang. Tapos grabe, as in sobrang ipinapahawak sa akin yung baton, ganyan. Tapos yung tatay ko, hala, ano to? Ganun. Ganun. Once lang naman yun. Pero, kiber. Char.
Yeah.
Ako yung brother ko, yung sinundan. Kasi we're sibling of, may 6 kami magkakapatid.
Okay.
Tapos, yung sinundan ko is, ang age gap namin is 11 years.
Oh.
So, yung pang 5th, yung brother ko, since akala nila siya na yung bunso. So, parang ewan ko kung mayroon bang, since may parents kasi were raised, hindi naman nila naabutan yung panahon ng Kastila or panahon ng Amerikano. Post-war naman na sila. Pero, yung parents kasi nila is brought up in the community na hindi pa totally free yung Philippines. So, I think they have this notion na kapag bunso, mas desirable kapag babae. Since yung bunso nila by that time is lalaki. So yun, dinadress nila si kuya ng dresses, ng doll shoes, ganyan.
So it's similar to this. Wow.
Interesting.
This is
Although
interesting.
paglaki niya, nung lumaki naman siya, hindi naman siya Bex. Yung totoong bunso, yung naging Bex.
Pass on.
It passed on to you.
Yeah.
Yun. And going back to Pacifica, and parang we didn't really, the construct of being gay in our time was more of the identity of a person, not of who they are with. Kasi Pacifica fell in love with a girl named Pilar. In that story. So eventually, they got married and they had children. I think magkakaroon ng part 2. Nagkaroon ng next movie, maanak ni Pacifica Palaypay. But in the end, she still remains effeminate. So we have even in 1969, we have people like Tekla. If you're familiar with the comedian si Tekla.
Yes.
So she existed even during 1969. Her persona existed. So yun. And we moved to the 70s. Ayun. I think this is...
Sino yung nasa likod ko?
I forgot their names. I think that's when the start of the Maxwell Lalaki narrative came in. I think that's when you see the typical... I think that's when yung parang kay Vice, wherein... Hindi pala. I think that's still a match narrative. I think that's the start na what we see now, yung Mask for Mask. And it happened in the 70s. And the movie, next slide.
They were both married? Tama ba?
Close enough. One of them was married.
Okay.
Next slide, Nico. May kita mo doon anong pangalan. And it's called Tubog sa Ginto.
Luis Gonzalez. Jay Ilagan. Jay Ilagan. Hey.
Yes, and it's Eddie Garcia also.
Yes.
But there was this question, there was this begging question in everybody's head when that came in. Is he even gay? Kasi during our time, as I said, I kept saying a while ago, it's not our Soji was based on who we are as beings, not who we are with. Because our culture, diba, it swang left and right then. So parang for this, the macho mentality here differed from the Western concepts. Because a man can have sexual performativity with both men and women without being categorized as gay.
Right, and wasn't there? I think there is a TikTok video wherein there's this guy who's saying that straight men can actually have sex with gay men without becoming gay themselves because they're not attracted to the guy; they just love the sex.
Yes. And during during our pre-Hispanic times, they had the same idea too. Parang we get married for companionship. We have sex because we want to. Parang it was okay. And they're still in their gender, in the genders that they embody with.
Interesting.
And the plot line, Mikey was correct. It's about Don Benito. Don Benito was a rich man. He had a wife. And the driver was the other guy. But the plot twist of this was...
Magaling kumambyo.
I
Oh
know.
my God.
I know.
Come
The plot
on.
twist was because Don Benito asked for favors, a lot of it from the driver, but the driver
Oh,
chose
A lot
to
of it. That's the
I
key
love
word.
it.
A lot of it.
chose to extort him naman and reveal his identity to the wife. And I think he also liked the wife too.
Interesting.
So he was having the side thing with the wife also. And eventually
God.
Don Benito died. He committed suicide.
Oh my gosh, why?
Ba't hindi na lang sila nag-threesome?
I don't know.
Throuple.
Baka
Maybe it was
in
an-
that time, it's not as as
Yeah,
common
yeah.
as it is now.
Yes, it is not.
Yeah.
And
Sino
from
si-
one ano go?
Sino si
basta-
Mario O'Hara? Ano kamag-anak ba to ni Mikey, ni Catherine O'Hara? Tama, Charla.
Hindi,
Pwede.
si Mario O'Hara yung driver,
With the
actually.
wind.
Siya yung, he's
siya
the
yung
other guy you were asking, I think. Yung nakatayo, who was standing, that was
yeah.
Mario O'Hara.
Hey Mario, what's up? Char.
But that's,
Mario
that was
Moore.
1970s, ha? For context. I think he's still alive.
Basta driver, sweet lover, sabi nga.
I know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
Ay, ano ba yan?
Oh my God.
Hello, Gooners. Gooners?
Hey, hi, Gooners.
Hey.
1995. Ayan. Shout out daw
Anyways.
to... Anyway. Yeah, go on.
Next is
Pero ang galing
97.
na, sorry, singit lang ako. Kasi si Eddie Garcia,
Go.
diba? Parang he's well known
Oo.
for action movies. And then meron pala siyang
Yeah.
Yeah.
mga ganito.
Very
Sobrang
true,
galing
very
na
true.
actor. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totoo.
Kaya nga yung stress doon talaga is they can perform being gay, but they are not associated as being gay.
Galing,
Hence,
no?
Dolphy can do
Yeah.
that, Eddie Gutierrez can do that. And if you notice the pattern, so far in the 1970s, they're all straight actors performing as gay.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Which sort of like is,
Yeah.
ano, diba? Parang,
Tsaka
in a
ano,
way... Sige.
In a way.
Anyway, it's kind of, I don't know, parang hindi ko pa na-process talaga yung thought eh. Pero, dati-rate, if you're a straight actor and you're playing gay roles, parang there's no fear of being stereotyped as such, as
No.
being gay. Pero now, parang, gay act, hindi ko pa napaprocess yung thought talaga eh. Pero parang
Yeah,
iba
I get your
ano.
thought process, but we'll get there when you
Diba?
reach to the 2010s.
Oh, sige.
I think
sige,
it was
pagdating na.
explained when we get there.
Yes.
Si Maki, you were gonna say something.
Hindi, kasi ano eh, parang if we look specifically at movies, we for me personally, we cannot really specifically look at movies alone eh, kasi movies
Yeah.
are also driven
Mhm.
by music. So during the
True.
1970s, we have the macho music, we have Rico J. Puno, we have
Yes.
Nonoy Zuniga, we have
Mm.
all these other male singers my father listens to, but I don't know who. Yung mga yun. So, dun nabuo yung ano yun, dun nabuo yung persona as a macho male that is accepted in the society, especially in performing arts, what we see in the streets, what we see in the movies, what we see in our black and white televisions. And
Yeah.
pero for this one kasi it's parang I think na I'm not really entirely sure pero based on what I've studied more than 5 years ago. Oh my god. Kasi 1970s kasi in the world is the phase or is the period where the hipster culture came about, especially in the Western. So in the hipster culture kasi we since we are still heavily influenced, even until now naman, we are still heavily influenced by the American wave, especially during the era that we're talking about. Nakalabas na kasi yung mga Amerikano pero nag-iwan sila ng mga
Bakas.
staples nila, ng bakas
Yes.
nila dito in terms of our art, in terms of our presentation, in terms of our politics even. Pero setting those things aside, yung hipster culture, meron tayong part sa hipster culture kasi 'di ba sa hipster culture we are all familiar, they have sex with whoever they want to, especially parang it's
Yes.
regardless of lalaki ba siya, babae ba siya, they just want to have sex. So feeling ko yung wave na yun, that part of the hipster culture, it also came about here in the Philippines and connecting it with the macho culture that we have locally. So this yung Tubog sa Ginto movie and the other movies that are alike came about um sa mainstream natin nung time na yon. And having a mainstream movie back then is not as difficult as it is now. Kasi before naman hindi kasi ngayon kasi we have foreign movies and then the locals. Parang sadly the majority of the Filipinos would still prefer foreign movies aside from Filipino movies. So with the 1970s, with the proliferation of films such as this, parang I'm not even entirely sure kasi hindi naman ako nabuhay ng 70s, but it's not as difficult as it is now to present a Filipino movie. So mas naging revered and mas nagkaroon sila ng opportunity to be as part of the shifters or the space shifters or the shape shifters of our culture. So ganun naging malaki yung impact ng mga movie na to sa culture natin for arts and culture in the Philippines.
Yeah. And in parallel with this, in the States, remember that this is the 70s, so Stonewall already happened. Tama, di ba? And this is the cinema that we have when Stonewall already happened.
Interesting.
In 1969.
1969.
Yes. And one thing I can say about the 70s, BGs.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, so there was no other era wherein falsetto and high-pitched
ilang octave yun,
correct, were so accepted. So parang napaisip ako sa sinabi ni Maki, no? And it also makes me wonder. Michael Jackson, correct. And it also makes me wonder if, for example, was our cinema also shaped by American cinema, or was it just organic within our country? I don't know.
I think we had influences based on this. We had influences, but our growth was different. Our flow was different. Because while this was happening in our cinema, on the other side, on the 1970s cinema, I think that was where the gay cinema was starting to flourish. Palang, they have more. Parang it's, kumbaga, Stonewall just happened. If you get the picture.
Yeah.
Pero there were still long threats and fights na I think the image of being gay during that time in 1970s and in the US side was they were a threat or they were ridiculed. So pick one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
While ours, it was this macho culture.
Right.
Diba? But on the flip side naman, we would see the other side of that because during Dolphy's period on the 60s, they were flamboyant queens, they were used for ridicule, they were used for laughter. But if you go to the next slide, we'd go into the deeper sense and naging full ang pagiging gay or bakla noong 70s because we have the gay tragedy. And with tragedy, we have the realism that happens with that. And one of them is Maynila, sa Makuko ng Liwanag, wherein they show the dark side of Manila, including the sex workers.
Oh.
Okay.
And most of them were gay or part of the community, trans.
Before ka mag-discuss dance, guys, pili kayo. Mario O'Hara, Jay Ilagan, or Bembel Rocco?
Wait, I don't know what Mario O'Hara looks like, so I'll go with Jay Ilagan.
Sige. Ako, Mario O'Hara ako. Char.
Ako, Jay Ilagan din ako.
Kalala ko.
Same with Ange. I don't know who they are. Bembol Rocco lang. Nung latter years.
Long-lasting talaga si Bembol Rocco, ano?
Oo. Pero Jay Ilagan's role, siya yung anak. He was the kid ni Don Benito, ni Eddie Garcia during that time.
Okay.
Ayun. And to further the gay tragedy, we go to the next slide, which is directed by si Lino Broca ata, tama ba? Yung na ang nanay kong tatay, if I'm not mistaken.
Lino Broca.
Yeah, it's Lino Broca.
It's Lino Broca. I think we know Lino Broca for his cinema when it comes to realism also.
Interesting.
Diba? And ang plotline ng ang tatay kong nanay is Corinne, the main character, changes his lifestyle because he associates himself as a feminine. So he's a typical, the Dolphy that we know in the 60s. But he has to change his lifestyle because he had to adopt a kid named Nonoy, which is Nino Mulak. Ninyo ba?
Yeah. Oh my God.
and he doesn't want to have Nino to undergo the same crisis that he has in the taunts when he was growing up. And this is where you see the influence of American media also. Na there were the taunts and identity crisis. Unlike before, we didn't have that. They didn't have that stigma pa.
Okay.
Now we're being shown that stigma in cinema as well.
Yeah.
And as the boy grows up, he tries hard to be a father. He acts straight when he is with him, alienating most of his sisters or in trans community around and the community LGBT community around him.
Mm-hmm.
And to add to the story, si Nonoy is actually the son of his lover because the lover, si Philip Salvador, had an affair with Marisa Delgado. And to add more to the drama, Marisa Delgado, the mother, wanted to get the kid again.
What?
Yep. Towards the end of the movie, she wants to reclaim her son. So, dun nagkaroon ng narrative na sino ba talaga yung lalapitan ng bata? Yung totoong magulang niya na nagluwal sa kanya o yung nagtuma yung tatay at nanay niya sa buhay niya. So, feel like ito yung nag-start ng ganong klaseng parang angle ng story na paglalathala natin sa mga storyang binibigay natin sa mundo, sa Pilipinas. Kasi hindi ito yung hindi ito lang yung movie na ganun yung tinatalakay, di ba? Na merong kukunin yung ako yung totoong nanay, hindi ako yung nagpalaki, so ako yung nanay, yung mga ganun. So, di ba? Hindi ito lang yung pelikulang yun. Pero ito yung nagsimula ng ganung wave of storytelling. Yun.
Uy, hindi naman hindi to Lino Broca, Lino Cayetano, nakalagay Charot lang.
Charot.
Lino Broca talaga to.
Yeah, it's Lino Broca. And and the end, if you want the spoiler, Nonoy was found kasi Dolphy's character parang joined the pageant and he had a great speech in that pageant, but it was cut short because it rained on him. So he was walking home while it was raining, and he found Nonoy on his doorstep. So the kid escaped and ran to Dolphy or to Corinne's character.
Nice.
It's a really nice movie.
It's a really nice movie. So you could see the realism. You could feel the trudge of realism. Now we're not just flamboyant. We're not just the happy-go-lucky joke, but end of the joke, not the vaudeville. And this is real.
Nice.
Substance and depth, no.
Yeah.
And another interesting factor of how the story is told in this particular movie, kasi diba si Corinne ay isang beautician, if I'm not really mistaken.
Yes, it is. Yes.
So, parang ano siya pagpapaganda. Di parang hindi naman sa sinasabi natin na lesser type of what it is to be gay ang mga beautician. Pero in the culture, especially if in the context of what we have right now in the postmodern culture, parang hindi tayo as a community, hindi tayo nako-confine lang as beauty makers, as parloristas and everything. Pero there's another facet of realism of what it is to be a beautician or what it is to be a parlorista. So aside hindi siya one-faceted or single-faceted lang na characterization made by Dolphy, pero pinakita rin niya yung kung paano maging tao ang isang parlorista. So ang laki din ng impact nitong movie na to, if you will remember Mamu, diba? So medyo meron siyang similarity with Mamu. Yeah.
That's right.
Yes, and Nomi was saying also, parang this is also where Becky Kang came from, yung ganong movie. So ang dami, there's a lot of impact na we're not just a flamboyant gay, but there's more to life. There's more to life to us.
True.
And you go to 8. Yes, go ahead, Nico.
Si Marisa Delgado ba? Kapatid ni John Delgado? Tama ba?
Hindi ko alam I don't know. Pwede.
Pero sure ako yung kapatid niya Delgado din.
Pero kung babae, Delgada ba?
Correct. Diba? Anyway, go.
Anyway, 80s. We proceed to the LGBT realness. Yes, and I think this is where, from Lino Broca's take on tragedy and realism, we are going deeper into that realistic landscape. We're going to society
Oh.
already. That's why we have the film like Macho Dancer into this
Mhm.
mix, because you're seeing the life of the macho dancers, how they are intertwined with the LGBT community and what they
Wait, sorry.
experience. So, okay lang,
Sorry.
you can move it na. And the next is
Okay.
yung anak ni Pacifica Palayfay.
Ito yun.
We heard of Pacifica a while ago. Now we have the children, which is played by Roderick Paulate.
Hmm. Next na
Pero
ba?
that,
Sorry.
next na. And the next one is, I think this is one documentary film by Nick de
Sorry.
Ocampo. And it's Oliver. And it shows, if,
My God.
ay, hindi pa pala, yun
Sorry.
muna. Si Oliver muna, sorry. Oliver.
Sorry.
And we follow Oliver as he becomes a breadwinner for the family through his drag performances. So that's the main gist of it. Parang that's the first intro of a drag queen into cinema.
Oh.
And Philippine cinema pala. And during the 80s, I think in yung bomba era, di ba? I think that's where, that's why when Macho Dancer came in, its parallels were the bomba era, wherein there's a lot of sexy women also coming out during that time. And to twist that, we have the realists. Now we have the other side. The next is the comic reliefs.
Okay.
And I think the highlight of this comic relief is si Roderick Paulate. He followed the footsteps of Dolphy.
Oh.
And his first scene came from High School Circa 65. And he was extolled because he was the comic relief of that high school.
Oh.
Parang he became the big performance, became the big ilaw nun. And also, yun, there's also Ako si Kiko and Hikay ni Roderick Paulate. But the main factor is on the next slide, you'd find where our term came from, maybe. Charot. 1984.
Oh my God!
Oh my God.
Diba? When I saw that, it's like,
amazing.
wait, did we get that term there?
What?
Oh my God, that's so interesting.
Tiffany, grabe.
And Charot is like a parody, or it took inspiration from Tootsie, an American film by Dennis Hoffman, wherein Dennis Hoffman was trying to get into work. So to find work, in order to get to work or find work, he had to dress as a woman.
Okay.
So and this was a parody, and Roderick Paulate was acting with Vilma Santos during that time.
Oh. Nakita ko talaga yung pangalan ni Ike Lozada, oh. Ike Lozada.
The question is for the previous movie or the previous era, 1970s. Yeah.
Hypermasculinity.
Yeah, it could be. It could be, because there's a lot of censorship and a lot of coding as well going on during that time, because they had to keep it on the down low. Hence, I think that fact during that time was, let's keep into the tragedy part. So that's why they were able to break out stories like, Brocas, Ang Tatay Kong Nanay, and that's why it ended like that too, because of that. Pero parang they had to present it in such a way that this is a tragedy. It's not kumbaga the flamboyant story that you're used to, and it fit well with the period as well. Ayun, after Charot, we have the next slide.
Charot.
Yes. During the pre-Hispanic times, we had Maglitong Yawa and Ladalad Amadali. So in the 80s also, those kinds of transformations happened in our cinema. We have Binibining Superman and Ako si Kiko and Hikay. These are shows done by Roderick Paulate. And I think Binibining Superman he's a Bex na GT driver, a gay GT driver, but turns into a superhero afterwards. Then Ako si Kiko and Hikay is like, he's playing two roles, two characters in one, like what Vice Ganda did currently with Girl Boy Bakla Tomboy and their siblings.
Didn't Romney Sermenta also do a dual role movie?
We'll get there, but it's not dual.
Okay.
And then I think the highlight was also She-Man. That's on the next slide. Mistress of the Universe by Joey De Leon.
Oh my God.
So he is Pandoy at day and she is She-Man at night. So ganun yung story na. Pandoy is a reference to Panday. So I think that's where it's a mix of they turned the yawa into a comic relief with this. Yun. And
Pero
on the
Joey De
9th,
Leon to, no?
Joey De Leon yan. That's Joey De Leon.
Okay.
And we get to the 90s naman.
Yes!
And that's
Hey!
nice. We're back
Come
to
on.
the sexy parts. Because I think during that time also we had Babae sa Breakwater. It was the rise again of the hypersexuality of the entertainment business. So we have two stories on the Burlesque King and the Midnight Dancers.
Si Leandro Baltimore ba to? Sino yan?
Leandro Lito.
Aliton ba? Okay.
Correct. At saka oh my God, Awakening movie na naman.
I know.
Yes, 90s was a lot of awakening for us.
And this was remade, diba, with Sebak and another breed of
anak ng macho dancers. Yeah.
And the most recent one,
And from the if you remember the period, if you move to the next slide, if you remember that period wherein we had the macho lalaki. So we have also the macho lalaki gays here from the gay counterparts, and it's objectification. Because during that time also, parallel to the women, they were being objectified. So might as well do the same for the guys. Pero there's this lingering, I think these were sold for the gay audience specifically, wherein there's the lingering gaze, wherein these are men on a pedestal. Kumbaga, if there were trophy wives, we have trophy men. And this was that era. So ang daming, I think that's when Mikey, yung mga pinapanood ni Mikey kanina, yung masasabi niya kanina. I think it fell during this period.
Guilty pleasures.
The guilty pleasures came in this period because they were, kumbaga, if we had, with the pink money, they were capitalizing on that. Guilty, that macho lalaki gaze na, and I think that's where it developed as well. Na we would see typical femme effeminate with a straight acting guy. That's when the mold came in. Kasi we were looking into being gay or the LGBT lens with partnership, with sexuality already. And ito na yun. But also in that same era, if you go to the 90s, I think, who said it a while ago? Pusong Mamon.
Yes.
That's the movie.
Yeah, Pusong Mamon.
I think that it also broke stereotypes in a way that even if we built, there was the notion of having the femme and mask relationship, there was the first mask relationship that appeared on screen. That's Pusong Mamon. And next slide, you'd find a bit of more details on it. That I think what they wanted to do was they wanted to modernize or make the modern masculine gay as equals, unlike wherein the dynamics of the bakla and the laki relationship was, because he's a trophy, I have to worship him, I have to adore him, I have to flower him, I have to pay him, I have to parang ganon, I have to spend for him, I have to work for him. While this one, they're equalizing it.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's a nice movie also kasi it's about a couple, si Eric Kizon's character and Albert Martinez's character, but Lorna Tolentino's character fell for Albert's character. So what she did was they went to a bar. She got him drunk. They got knocked up, and she is living with the partners in the movie. But eventually, they had an agreement, and I think because the two wanted to have a kid during that time, so the baby will be going to the couple. And they become really good friends in the end of the story.
Sino ka Jonty? Si Albert.
Si Albert.
Si Albert.
Okay.
Si Albert. And it's a nice movie also. Parang you'd see the dynamics, their cute dynamics. It reminded me of the dynamics of the Angel, Zanjo, and Sam. But this is the older version of that.
Third party, tama ba?
The third party. Because they wanted to have a baby, and it's more of the working class already with that generation. And I was surprised, honestly, when I saw that in the 90s era. Because I thought it was all bomba. Then I saw that. Parang, this is different.
Yeah. Totoo, yung shift no. Pero Albert Martinez, come on, 'di ba?
I know.
I
mean.
Right.
Yes, and at the end of the 90s, parang when you get to 1998, you'd see the start of the trans and tama ka, Nico. Go ahead.
Okay.
You'd see the trans and the non-binary narratives, but it was not called non-binary during that time, I think. But the two highlights were Miguel and Michelle and Jaja Saturna.
Ano papanood to?
Jaja Saturna sa comics turned into a movie, into a musical and then into a movie. And if you go to the next slide, you'll have the movie in 1998, Miguel and Michelle.
Si Romnick to.
That is played by Romnick Sarmiento. Okay. And the story was the family, it starts with Romnick going into a plane, saying goodbye to the family as a straight guy, but comes back to the Philippines as a transgender woman. As in announced na, pero it was never told na transgendered. I mean, she didn't use the term yet. But she was forcing the people, or parang saying to the people, no, I am a woman. To a point na you could see the dynamics of the twist of both in the movie, wherein there was one scene that her sister was being teased because parang you now have a sister instead of a brother. Yung ganong concept. And there was also an argument with Romnick's character and a priest because he was best friends with the priest. He was good friends with the priest. Parang that religious tint was there na we shouldn't be changing what God has given us. Pero ang sabi ni Romnick during the time, but what if I just want to match what I am inside and God allowed me to?
Which is exactly what
And I think he mentioned the word transsexual and also in this film, and there's that long quote saying he was fighting against another friend's wife, kumbaga. He was saying, ikaw totoong babae. Ako gawa lang. Hindi lang ako dapat tanggapin bilang babae. Dapat na tanggapin nila ako bilang transsexual. Siguro dapat tanggapin ko rin yun para sa sarili ko. I think that's where the ideology came in.
Powerful.
In English, you are a real woman. I am made up.
They should not accept me as a real
woman. But you should accept.
Sexual.
Yes, and I think I should accept that for myself as well. So yun, powerful words from Romnick Sarmiento. And during that time, he was trying to help his best friend, na isa who had a wife, but he knows that, or she knows that, his best friend was gay.
Yeah,
I think that's when the argument came about.
Nice.
Kasi nagtalo.
Pero asan si Andy? Asan si Sheryl Cruz nito? Sure.
Oo nga.
She's the wife. She was the wife, I think.
Oh my gosh.
Interesting.
I'm not sure, tama ba?
Charot lang.
I-google ko yan.
Google nga natin yan. Habang ginagoogle ni Mikey, let's go to the next slide. Which is another powerful...
Si Maki talaga.
Go Maki.
I've seen all of these movies, no. Pero siguro as a point of reference of where we are coming from, no. Kasi especially if you will read through what this script says, yun nasa naka-flash sa screen. Presentation talaga to, sorry guys. Pero yung naka-flash sa screen, if you will look at it in the lens of 2017, 2018 up to now, it's problematic, 'di ba? Pero we should take it we should take it with a grain of salt. Kung ano ba yung perspective ng mga tao, kung ano yung kultura nung panahong nilabas nila to.
That's
kasi
right.
If before this is already revolting, this is already transformative, this is already progressive. 'Di ba? Progressive to nung time na yun eh. Pero if we came up with a movie, sasabihin to in 2021, it will be already backward, di ba? Kung titignan natin.
Correct.
So we should take this with a grain of salt on how we would set our perspectives and align them with the year that it is, with the year it is produced, di ba?
And it took 30 years then, just to add lang, sorry Mikey, it took 30 years for that Stonewall protest to reach our shores. That mentality come to our shores. It took 30 years. It took the 1990s for us to accept or even hear the term transsexual in cinema. And ito yun.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so, just to add rin naman, parang I think what's important is that we put into perspective that we are all still learning about sexuality, gender
Yeah.
identity, and gender expression, diba? So even
Yeah.
now, if for example we fast forward 20 years from now, maybe the things that we are saying would be backward to those people in the future, diba?
Yep.
So yun parang let's just consider that what happened here was that we were getting a glimpse of what transsexuality might possibly be. Alam mo yun?
Mm-mm.
Parang it was a step towards the right direction. So yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yep. Because maybe during that time, remember, we had lots of coding happening too. So some words could have been taboo, but to say the word transsexual in the 1990s, in 1998, was like a big
Mhm.
step maybe during the time. To even introduce a
Yeah.
character like that was a big step.
Yep.
And maybe it's also siguro I'm just going into the character's mindset siguro na maybe for them themselves they also didn't feel that they deserve to be called a woman. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it was a struggle for
Yeah.
them
Mm.
still
Yeah.
because maybe yung coding nila because of society and what everyone is saying, and because they weren't accepted as a true woman, then probably what this means also is that I will just have to accept that people won't see me as a true woman.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
So
Mm-mm.
maybe situational. Yeah.
Yeah. And the last trivia for this one is just based on a real story. So there. And the next slide is
Oh,
also based on another real story.
oh
Yes.
yes.
Yes, Markova,
And
Comfort
that's it.
Gay, 2000s. And the story is you're following Walterina Markova and his life during the Japanese period.
And it's
Yeah.
a family cast.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And
The
Oh.
key
in the
zones.
different stages of his life, it's played by different Kizon. It's played by Dolphy. The last stage is played by Dolphy, and the younger years are played by Epi and Eric, who
Eric.
are his sons.
Mm-mm.
And we
Yeah.
all know what the Japanese period was like, and it's just an introduction of the trans community as well, but
Mm-mm.
in a realistic and different dark light.
Yeah.
Because you'd see them as sex workers, as abused by the Japanese. You'd see them thrown into that comfort gay sphere.
Mm-mm.
It's
Mm.
hard and it's gripping. And this quote you see here now is actually the quote by the real Walter Dempster,
Oh
who
wow.
Mhm.
unfortunately died, but he was also housed in the Golden Gates in the
Okay.
Philippines. But he
Mm.
died unfortunately because of a motorcycle accident. And he
Oh.
leaves us with words saying, "As humans, we won't live long. Revealing my own story is my way of inspiring other gays who continue to be oppressed today. By my act, I may have probably given freedom to many other gay people."
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Powerful.
So powerful.
Super.
So
Impactful.
I'm in a way kind of like also uh, I don't know if we can call it reclaiming the term comfort gay. So they were providing comfort to other gays as well that hey, it's okay to be you and it's okay to
Yeah.
show who
That's
you
yeah.
are.
another way of looking at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
right? That's cool.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah. So from realism, we move to the next, which is a comic-driven story. We have Jaja Saturna, and I think that's where we have
Yes.
one of the first trans actors to come into the scene, Bibing Gandang Hari.
Right,
Mm.
right,
And
right.
it's a very socio-political comic if you look at it in a
Yeah.
different
Yes,
Yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah.
yes.
like there is a group of aliens na yung parang si Femina and parang she's embodying the concept of women yung spelled with a Y because they want to eliminate men in that
Mm.
universe.
Mhm.
But there's a
Okay.
major difference. Eh, according sabi nga ni Jude, the Saturna was written by Carlo Vergara, turned into a musical by
So,
Vincent De
Vincent De
Jesus,
Jesus.
Mm.
the
Yeah.
great Vincent De Jesus. And there's
I
one
love the
story.
play.
Yeah, the play was awesome. And there's a difference in the movie and the play. So you'd see how much commercialism comes into play from the musical to the play to the movie.
Mhm.
Like
Mm.
that's when parang in the musical you'd hear, and also in the comics pala, in the comics musical and the movie, like it's shown specifically with Dodong's character. Kasi with Dodong's character, he was just on the side, kumbaga,
Mm.
just there. as the lover for, or as the
Yeah.
love interest for Ada, the main character. In the musical, we get to hear more of Dodong.
He sings.
He sings. It's played by Red Anderson, and Jaja Torna was played by Yula Valdez
I love
in the
Yula.
musical, and I loved it. And there's this particular scene wherein they were telling what they aspired to love, or who did they love, what was their love. Like one was just being yung sa the gay side na, no, I want him to be macho, I want him to be cute, I want him to be this. Well, Yula's character, or si Ada, the first, I think I forgot who played as Ada during that time. She just wanted to find her true love, someone who would love her for who she was. And Dodong's character, on the flip side, because he's shown as a masculine guy, but he's saying in the musical, I want someone who is strong but tender, and I want someone regardless. I want that regardless of who or she is. And ito ko in Tagalog. Kasi in the Tagalog language, we use the word siya instead of he or she. So there's no gender in our language.
Yeah,
that's true.
Very true.
Yeah.
Wait, pero I agree with what they said. No? Parang,
but the difference in the movie, ang daunting pala. Bago ka magsalita, Mikey, ko okay lang.
Okay. Sige.
The difference in the movie with Dodong's character and that particular song was they turned it into a heteronormative, commercialism turned it into a heteronormative way, that there was a third party. The third party cliche, there's a girl named Crystal. Instead of three people songing about their love, about what they want to love, it was two people competing for the love of Dodong. That's what they did in the movie.
Oh,
okay. Interesting.
Parang they needed to have a female, a cisgendered female to compete against Ada, who was gay. Yes, si Crystal na naman, parang reference to Hello Stranger. Hi, Crystal!
Oh my gosh.
And like, as you were saying, sorry, I got to cut you.
I was saying that I think, kasi Yula, I saw her in the play, and I wasn't able to watch the movie with Jaja Padilla, pero parang I feel na Yula has more grit and has more of that angas factor than Jaja has. So I mean, that's really all I wanted to say.
Yes. I agree completely. That's why I love Yula in the play. Yeah, si Crystal na naman. And there, I think we had in the 2000s, there's a lot more happening. If you move to the next slide, parang if the 90s had the gay sexuality, now we have the rise of the gay yuppie and the sexual exploration of people.
And the rise of Coco Martin.
Yes, of Coco Martin. Kasi if you noticed, during the
Coco Martin.
Coco Martin.
Uy, grabe siya.
Grabe siya, 13 lang.
Uy, charot lang.
Masyahista.
Go, Lance. Sorry.
Ayun. So, during the 80s and the 90s, I think, you would usually find the stories wherein it's usually yung nasa lower middle class. You'd find the sex workers. But here, you'd find are the rich and the younger class, yung medyo alta na, the higher class or the middle class in the stories, in the storyline. Kaya the gay yuppies, the people who can purchase, the people who can buy, the people who could go anywhere. Hence, you have the masahista or the masur, which represents that class wherein I can go buy and purchase for a massage and its special service. While the lalaki sa parola naman is like, it's the meeting of two different perspectives. The gay person from the city, and an innocent provinciano, which is the lalaki you find there, or the guy you find there, in a story. Parang it also ignites a sexual exploration of that provinciano, or the people from the province, about, so this is what it's like in the city. So this is what they do in the city. And one example would be the next slide, which is the most famous Bathhouse in 2003. So you'd find the rise of the paying class already, the shift wherein this is where the shift starts already. Mikey was saying a while ago, the mask for mask. We saw that in the 90s with Eric Kizon and Albert Martinez, but during this period, it was amplified. because they transferred if you remember the match lalaki gays from the 90s also, they transferred it now to the gay appeal. Now you can be gay and also be a macho lalaki. Unlike before, it has to be cisgendered straight. Now they combine both into that ideology. And also in the bathhouse, you would see denial of being effeminate from the character Argel because he has to play it straight or kumbaga macho in the bathhouse to get a booking.
Oh, that's why.
That's why, and I think that was the mark of. That's where we kick off na eh. I think that's where our stories start to generate na. That mask for mask story.
Yeah.
It's there now. We're back to that again. It's a mix. It's a meld of what happened before. Diba, if you notice?
Ano
It
kaya
matches
na-trigger ng shift na yun?
Yeah, good question.
I think yung nag-trigger din kasi kasabay nito was what's happening 2000s. It's a digital age already. So we're getting to see more of what's going around in the world. Internet we have DS yung dial-up already. Internet was already launching. So we're seeing more of what's happening on the other side of the universe, of the world na. We're not in our own bubble already. And we're getting to see what was it like in Western media and Western cinema. And I think that was a trend during that time. But there's also a bright side to 2000s and 2010s. If you go to the next slide, Nico.
Wait lang, ang aangas ng mga lalaki dun sa likod, na-intriga ako. Sure lang.
Yep.
Tignan nyo guys, sure lang. Eme.
We have stories diversified na. And Billy and Emma is one of them. It's a story of two Catholic students, girls in an all-girls school who happen to fall in love. And we also have Dead na si Lolo. And it's a character from Roderick Paulate. Why it's part of this circle then? Kasi her transgendered character and that story is just incidental. In a way, she's just normal. She just happens to be there. She is just part of the story and not, kumbaga, hindi siya yung, she's not the laughing stock. She's not the tragedy. She's not the butt end of the joke, but she's part of the family.
Actually,
and she's mourning for the grandfather. But apparently, her character is still loud. Yun lang. Yeah, and other story themes, and that would have coming out stories on the next slide. Like you'd see two stories on both ends of the spectrum. You have ang lihim ni Antonio or Antonio's Secret and ang pagdadalaga ni Maximo Oliveros.
I like pagdadalaga.
Same.
Yes, ang pagdadalaga ni Maximo Oliveros is a sweet story where she just has a crush on the police officer. And we just follow her journey. And it's now a musical also called Maxi.
By the way, trivia, the guy who played the cop in Ang Pagdadalaga, I actually worked with him in HSBC.
Ooh, really?
Oh my God.
He worked there, yeah.
You betch.
Ang tangkad niya.
Oh my gosh.
Oh. And ang lihim ni Antonio naman explores what we've seen a while ago, their sex exploration. It's a coming out story wherein he's trying to figure out what he likes, who he is.
Yeah.
But eventually, we know how it goes.
Yeah.
He has a crush on his uncle, but his uncle took advantage of him. Took advantage of that using the macho gay gaze. And if you haven't watched the film, the spoiler will be the secret is not actually, it's a double-edged sword. It's who he is as a person, and the secret that he carries is because of that abuse from his uncle, yung sexual violation from his uncle, the mother killed the uncle. And that's the secret they're keeping in the story.
Whoa!
Yes. And when the cops came, you haven't watched it? Oops. When the cops came, sorry Nico, when the cops came, Antonio said, I killed my uncle.
Grabe.
It is so depressing. Oh my God. Like,
depressing. Yes.
But I think it's, I don't know if it's one of the first films to actually talk about familial abuse. Kasi uncle niya yun eh. Trusted.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and so Jude says it's also in Gaga Ulala for those watching. If you want to watch it, check it out there.
Yes.
Yeah, and from coming out stories, we also have more relationship stories that came out. So there's a lot. There are a lot. We have So Happy Together, Kasal, My Husband's Lover, Changing Partners, In My Life, and The Third Party. What's unique about the 6 stories on relationship was So Happy Together is you're looking at the relationship of the gay character with the best friend, Eric Kison with Chris Aquino, as they grow old
Right.
together,
Right.
as they grow old happy together, wherein Chris Aquino gets kids, Eric
Yun ba
becomes
yung
one of
kasama
the
si sorry, si Janeline Mercado?
yes, they had a
Yeah,
starstruck
yeah. I
people
watched
there. It was
that.
that movie.
Yeah.
Is it based on Wong Kar Wai's Happy Together or no?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think the theme song of the movie kasi was Happy Together.
Happy. Yeah, same with the.
Together. Yeah.
No, hindi pala Wong Kar. Was it Wong Kar Wai? Oh my god, I forgot. But it's a Chinese or Taiwanese movie.
Not sure. And then My Husband's Lover naman, you see the other perspective. Kasi usually when you tell stories, you don't see kumbaga the girl or Carla Abellana's character. Here you'd also see her side. And that's why it differs from the others. In Kasal naman, it's the first film after all what that happened. They were triggered by a wedding to question their relationship together.
Ganda to, no?
Yes.
Yeah.
And in Changing Partners naman, we were talking about it a while ago. It's a story of 2 people, but you'd see the genders change throughout the movie as they switch. But it's one older person and one younger person, and you'll see the shift in dynamics whenever there's a shift also in their roles, in their gender.
Yeah.
Whenever it's also a musical, so it's beautifully made. If you haven't watched it, please do. And In My Life, although there's a gay love story also with Luis and John Lloyd Cruz, but you also get to see the perspective of Vilma Santos, or the mother of someone, of being what is it like for being a mother being gay. And nakakatawa kasi they also introduced Vice Ganda into this picture.
Nasa New York yung setting nito, di ba?
Yes, New York yung setting nito. And then there's also The Third Party. It's similar to Pusong Mamon, but on this generation's time period. On this take ngayon. It's like, what is it like na your best friend is kumbaga your psychic in crime is gay, is now having a partner. What is it like?
True.
And I think during this period, if you notice, there's little on the next slide. There's little on sapphic love. You only have a dose of it, but on the 2000s and the 2010s and 2000s, you see more of it coming out na.
Whoa.
Yeah, we have si Chedeng at si Apple, we have Rome and Juliet, Baka Bukas, and The Rich Man's Daughter. The Rich Man's Daughter was big because it was shown on national TV. Si Glyza and si Rian, my God. If we had My Husband's Lover, we have them.
Yeah.
Sir Will mentioned it.
Yeah.
Bye.
Sorry. Akala ko talaga seeing the poster, the title is 2 days to go. Sabi ko, mayroon bang 2 days to go na?
Actually.
Sorry naman.
I can see how that can be interpreted that way, yes.
I know. I'm so sorry. It was their poster launching because I love the photo as well. And that was the only photo I could find them together.
Edi ikaw na, Sir Will. Char.
Yes, ikaw na, Sir Will. Share your love with us.
Also.
Yeah.
She's a great actress,
Yeah. And with Rome and Juliet, you'd see 2 women kiss on screen. With Baka Bukas, you'd find the struggles of being in a sapphic love relationship. In si Chedeng and si Apple naman, it's just an interesting story of Elizabeth Oropesa and Gloria Diaz. Because
my gosh.
si Chedeng, on her husband's wake, she came out lesbian. And she pulled in Gloria Diaz, Apple, to look for her ex-girlfriend. And that's the story of Chedeng and si Apple.
Okay.
It's fun. It's a fun journey until they get to find the expert.
Hala siya.
Wait, parang gusto kong panoorin yung mga to.
Diba? Ang saya. Lalo sa Chedeng and Apple, I would recommend Chedeng and Apple. I apparently saw that in Cinema One. Sabi ko, this is interesting. Yeah. Oh, okay. And we also have other narratives. If you go to the next slide, Now we are going out of the box with stories and with new platforms. You have out of the box stories from Adan and Zomba Dings, patay na Shokot si Remington. With Adan, they started to mix the genre because if you notice, there's a specific genre with our stories. It's usually drama or love. This one, they combined it with thriller stories. And with Zomba Dings, they mixed it into the horror comedy fantasy realm
Yeah.
because being gay was a curse apparently in the series.
It's in reference also to
Minamoto
ano. Is it here?
I'm
Zomba
not
Dings,
sure.
Yeah. It's
It
also
was?
in reference to ano. It's also in reference to Patayin sa Takot si Barbara.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
actually.
Mhm.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes. And before the boys love genre came out into the web series, we had two already who entered that
Right.
platform.
Exactly.
We have Hanging Out by Out Magazine. Tama, di ba? Out Mag?
Yes.
Or Team Mag? I
Yes.
forgot the name.
Team
Yeah, yeah,
magazine.
Team Mag.
Team
Team Mag.
magazine. Correct.
And you have your Tadhana and Blood.
Oh
So
my
they
God.
already came out before the BL genre came out.
Right.
And Hanging Out naman is a story of just apparently two guys who just fell in love or who
I've seen
who hung
I've
out
seen
together.
Hanging Out. I mean, 'di ba? Bakit
Yes.
pa tayo susunod sa yapak ng BL sa labas? Meron naman na tayong mga ganitong
Mm.
kwento. 'Di ba?
And
Char.
your Tadhana naman, if you were looking for a femme character who would lead a story, you have your
Uh-huh.
Tadhana because the main lead is a femme
Ah,
character, a vlogger, a makeup artist
Right.
going to
nice.
school, and apparently he has a crush on one of his schoolmates. And
Oh,
the schoolmate na parang who feels a bit cisgendered, who's medyo cisgendered, is having a crush as well to the femme
yeah.
character.
Yeah.
Correct. Who happened to be an FA in real life. Edge.
Alam,
yes.
alam.
And as 2010s progress, next slide, we also widen the age and the spectrum as well. So we have
Yeah.
Metamorphosis, Die Beautiful, Rainbow Sunset, and Mamu, a Mother Too. Die Beautiful tackles the story of a trans woman and her funeral,
Yeah.
or as someone who's also doing drag. We also have Rainbow Sunset that tackles a love story that's multidimensional, multi-age, and also it's an old couple that we don't usually see now in cinemas. If you notice, they were all usually in the same kumbaga, same age group. And Metamorphosis tackle the story of an intersex person and his life, dealing with it. And Mamu is more on the transgender, transsexual perspective. I love Mamu because you could see, as you're saying a while ago, you felt saddened but enlightened. Parang this is their lives, but I feel empowered after that.
Totoo.
And I'm all about Aaron here in this movie.
Hey, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, come
Like,
on.
talk about a strong man.
I know.
Diba?
Decisive
Oh my God.
man. Si Aaron talaga, no? Aaron. Char.
Ang dami.
Yeah, although there may be a wide, parang you can see the growth already of our cinema in 2000s to 2010s. But we are left with one question at the end, which is in the next slide. It's a question of representation. Because in the current years, I think this is to answer what Mikey was saying a while ago. Like, why can't, before, if you notice, there were very few people who would who associated themselves with being gay in the real life, but they can't be actors. Kumbaga, had to be played with straight actors. And this is where star power comes in, where the power of social media, commercializations come in. Parang, are you marketable enough? Does your market want you? Can you do that? Can you do this? And I think the best example was Vice Ganda, na she proved or he proved that being gay could be marketable, but there was a twist to that. You'd have to embody it as well. It's like your world should clash with your showbiz life, with your cinema life.
Grabe.
And you should conform to what is expected of you as a gay. Diba? In the society. Which is, although it's somehow quote unquote revolting. Now we have in the mainstream the likes of Vice Ganda and the others. It's just that it entails so much responsibility on how it is to to really cultivate to cultivate the culture, because first and foremost you have the platform, pero then pumapasok yung question on how you should responsibly use your platform to advance what it is to be gay and make it easy, make the life easier for others, not only for you. I'm not naman bashing Vice Ganda or in this total sense, no. It's just that sana lang nagamit yung platform into something good for the community. It's good that merong marketable aspect of it na kumita siya eventually. Pero sana lang nagamit yung platform para ma-share yung stories din ng iba. Hindi, kasi dito man dun na confine yung community into something trivial, which is what we are trying so hard to debunk right now. It is very hard to debunk history and culture.
I know. And that's, if you look at the next photo, that's where Suffer Sirena comes in, because the quote, it comes from a reference of Super Serena, wherein they parang amplify the beautiful trans drag women in society. But the flip side of that, we had Suffer Serena, wherein they pick the ugliest contestant, make them the butt of the joke, let them do certain tasks in order to gain favor of the audience.
Oh, okay.
So that was it's part of a noontime TV show segment before. Okay. I'm glad it's not there because it was really, parang, as much as I want to give the spot for the other community, because in Super Serena, they made like the trans woman should be that beautiful. Kumbaga, they set a standard again, like what they did with Vice Ganda. Na the LGBT community, when you are being gay, you should be like Vice Ganda. They gave us a mode. With Super Serena, they gave us a trans mode. You should be beautiful. You should be this. With Super Serena, parang they bended that mold a bit, but they went downhill in a way. It just gave a bad taste in the mouth. It's like we're going back to the 50s. If you go back to Dolphy's Goryeo, the vaudeville, if you remember that vaudeville, butt end of the joke stereotype story, we're back there again, but with all the learnings and all the progress that happened throughout the years. And it's all mixed together into one mold that you have in Vice Ganda. Because Vice Ganda's partner is Ayon in New Life, who is gay, who's the macho, lalaki, straight, cisgendered person who falls in love with Vice Ganda. And for him, he can still be cisgendered if he wants to, even if he falls in love with Vice Ganda, even if he's partnered with Vice Ganda. So there.
I don't know. I guess one of the things that Vice Ganda did was, because their background is really comedy bars, diba? And as we all know, in comedy bars, there's a lot of ridicule that happens, whether we admit it or not. You ridicule each other, you ridicule gays, and you ridicule the audience. And I think what Vice Ganda did was to take the comedy bar and sort of like put it into mainstream television. And she was a product of her background, diba? So parang she grew up, I think, pandering to the needs of boys and fitting that mold. And like we mentioned earlier in the other movies that we've seen, is that parang, I think, lumaki siya dun sa era na kailangan bayaran mo yung lifestyle ng lalaki for you to gain affection. Parang that was sort of like the psyche that was sort of like prevalent during that time when Vice Ganda was growing up. So nadala rin niya yun, no? And I think she has had a lot of success in a way by propagating or maintaining that sort of image of gay people. Like, you would hear jokes, maririnig mo siya parang nagsasalita siya na parang, ay, magkano ka ba? Or, ilan ba sapatos gusto mo? Alam mo yan, parang there's always something like that. And and you would also notice that a lot of the contestants or a lot of the people that she talks to in the shows would always, I don't know how, pero parang feel ko, they tell their story so that she can give them something in return. Alam mo yan. So parang, I think na there is, like what Mackie said, parang there is a very thin line that has to be made bigger. Kasi
Yes.
parang ano eh, parang if that is what we're seeing, especially from a very prominent and a very vocal and a very influential person, then that is also the image that may be projected onto other gay individuals. Diba? Na parang,
Yeah.
parang konting lambing ko lang, konting sweet talk ko lang, mapapabigay ito, or di ba, may makukuha ako. And I don't think that has changed. So I'm hoping, and even in the movies, parang there's always yung pinakita natin na girl boy, bakla, tomboy, parang she's always playing these characters wherein it's more of the stereotypical kind of gay rather than the progressive kind of gay. So I'm just
Yeah.
hoping that tama si Maki, I'm hoping that Vice can come to a point wherein she breaks barriers rather than maintain barriers. So yun
Yeah.
lang. That's it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like she needs to survive, and in order to survive, she has to play the commercial gay or what is expected of gay assigned to her, kumbaga. And that's the FM role gay. And I think I also grew up with Vice Ganda in our media, and it was tough because I didn't relate to that persona ever.
Me
Diba?
too. Actually,
It's not me. And I felt out of place because of that. Parang, does a person like me even exist in our media? And it's funny that I had to go back to the 90s to find that person. I had to go back to Pusong Mamon and find Albert Martinez to see, oh, I
Yes.
could be like that. And I'm also happy that if we go and are present right now, we see media like that too. Na it's you kumbaga, we have a plethora already, a lots of there we it's kumbaga sabi namin ni Mikey a while ago, it's wider now. Now we're in an era where in 2020 we're in an era where boys love is being flagged or being waved around na, oh, it's okay to be this, it's okay to for a masked guy to fall for a masked person again, like what happened in 1990s. Pero this time you're seeing more layers to them, like we are seeing like on the current one, stuck on you, you're seeing a femme character falling again for a masked person. Pero but the person's sexuality or Soji is clear to us na it's not now we know he's not cisgender or something. We don't know. Pero it's blurred in a way.
yeah.
Unlike before we know, oh, that he's straight, but this one it's so blurred.
Yeah. Not to
And
ano naman, no?
go.
Not to trample on anyone's success, because first and foremost, it should be celebrated if someone, regardless of
Yes.
whether you are inside or outside the community, who grows to be successful. Not to trample on specifically Vice Ganda's success. Pero ano lang, sayang lang yung opportunity, because I get his or her, hindi ko kasi sure, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure how he or she identifies, pero not parang I get what he or she means na this is his story na gusto niyang ipakita, kasi we cannot really totally, you cannot totally set it aside na his story is not his own truth, because it is.
Yeah.
It's just that what's sad is the opportunities are not equal on parang the magnifying lens was so put on him na kaya yung kwento niya yung dinadala ng normal na tao ngayon in 2021, di ba? Sana lang nagkaroon ng equal opportunity. I cannot really pinpoint if it is his fault or it's not, pero it's just somehow unfortunate. Di pala somehow, it is unfortunate na hindi tayo nagkaroon ng ibang mga, especially mga kabataan ngayon, yung mga bata, mas bata sa atin. Hindi sila nagkaroon ng, total person na titignan nila as what it is to be gay. I mean, I'm sure there are other lances out there na hindi nagsasalita, na hindi nila nakikita yung sarili nila kay Vice Ganda. Diba? Because ako at some point, parang 2013, I was what? 16? Ganon. So parang kung isipin mo, as a naive young person, and we don't have anyone to look up to, na nakikita mo yung sarili mo in the mainstream media, you are left with somehow you're left with no choice but to conform to what it is that is presented in front of you, which in this case, vice ganda. So, ayun, parang I appreciate him, especially kasi ang nakikita ko kasi sa kanya is the disconnect of how his movies are compared to what he says off screen, or like hindi pa sa off screen, not in the movies pero on screen, like in his noontime show or in his late night show, diba? You can see him as very vocal. It's just that he's vocal in a specific platform which he does not carry to the mainstream media na dinadala ng mga tao throughout the years, because one episode of GGV would probably be forgotten. What happened and what was told in an episode would probably be forgotten a year after. Pero yung movies niya kasi, dala-dala yun ng tao as they grow up, di ba? So sayang lang yung opportunity na as big as a movie, na alam mo yung cultural impact and long-lasting impact talaga siya sa mga tao, is hindi nadala yung mga certain causes, certain advocacies of awareness. And at this point kasi, for me, personally, if you're still clamoring for awareness, you are 3 years behind already, because we are no longer clamoring for awareness. We're clamoring for acceptance. We're clamoring for something bigger. We're clamoring for something representation, responsible representation.
Right.
So, in lang, parang sana lang na-shift yung culture as ng isang tao as big as Vice Ganda into a more inclusive, into a more responsible, na nanghinayang lang ako. Pero again, I cannot really call him out na kasi I'm sure he has his reasons why, and that may be financial, 'di ba? Kung paano niya iaangat sa buhay yung sarili niya, yung pamilya niya, and everything. And it's nice that there's someone, a member of the community who made it big, 'di ba?
Yeah.
Yun lang. Sana lang mas malawak yung spectrum na dinala niya.
And I think if you before you start, Angie, just a quick tidbit lang din. Like, if you go back to Dolphy, I think, and Roderick Paulate, those two were playing not just gay roles. Roderick played straight roles, or kumbaga cisgendered roles. They played, as in they diversified their acting chops. From Dolphy and Roderick Paulate, just look at their discography, and you'd find them in different spaces, different platforms, and different roles. And regardless of gender, they're everywhere. But for Vice Ganda, for some reason, for 20 this years that came, he is stuck in that specific capsule, that specific lens, that specific character, kumbaga. And I just hope they could diversify his character into something else. Na he's not just the trans you've seen in my life, because that's where he started to enter the showbiz career. But he is also something else. That there's a deeper story, not just a comedic role, but there's a deeper story in that too. And maybe that's where we can forget what social media is doing right now. Because as people as well, if you remember, we tend to combine both of their lives together, the cinema life and the real life. Malay natin, her story is she just wants a fun expression in her cinema because her life itself is not fun before. It could be that, we don't know. Because kumbaga, the social lens is looking at his life in a darker lens. So when it comes to cinema, she wants to balance it out. We don't know if that's really happening. I'm just looking at it in a different perspective. Because right now, there's a pressure of stardom, of influence, that influence right now. Na when you have that power, you should be representing all of us. You should be our speaking voice. But isn't it, like I joined the talk in Space yesterday, parang the question was, isn't that too messianic for putting all the effort and play in one person only, or in this case, in Vice Ganda? Whereas we can be the driving force, we can be the waves, we can also create, be louder in multitudes instead of just one person creating that change. Go,
Yeah,
Ange. Sorry.
Ange, I think
I
you
just
want
needed
to
to let
say
it out.
something.
Yeah, go. I actually short ang sabi ko. I think there's a stigma pa rin talaga sa mainstream media na gay people can only be successful if you're funny or kung FM ka.
Mm.
And then, if you notice yan yung mga palabas sa GMA or ABS na may LGBT scenes, mostly are played by established actors para mas acceptable pa rin for the
Diba?
mass. So,
Right.
yun. Parang, I think, hindi pa rin, like, marami pang kailangan gawin yung
Yes.
Agree.
media natin para,
Yeah.
talaga,
Yeah.
sobrang.
Totally.
Yeah. And compared to our brothers and sisters from the States, we may have a deep-rooted historical background, as you've seen in the Babaylan culture, but that was erased or that was burned, terrorized, vilified by the Spaniards. Compared
Ah.
to them, we are young because they started in the 1970s and look, they're still battling it out. And ours started 1990s, and we are young compared to them. Our filament, our mentality on what the current situation of SOGI and LGBT movement, we are young.
That's right. That's right. Ito mga Kastila na to, no? Kay horror. Diyos ko.
I blame Philip Salvador. Yung pelikula niya kasi, inaway niya yung mga Amerikano, pinalayas niya. So I blame Philip Salvador.
It's hard to erase 333 years of Spanish rule.
Just go.
Right.
Yes.
That's right.
It's a cultural annihilation.
Exactly.
I-erase
And,
nun.
and you know, parang the effect that 333 years can have on a country's psyche is still being felt today, diba? Parang there are so many practices that we still attribute to the Spanish rules, diba? Tapos yun, yung mga social structures natin, the way we see people, the way we sort of like place people in boxes and categorize and all of that. The way we are patriarchal these days is all because of the Spanish Inquisition.
Colonization. But it's not just them. Kasi feeling ko, I think the best example I could give is the Manila road system. Because our Manila road system was, imagine it as a green grassland. And when the Spanish came, it was wild and free before they came. And we just had settlements. And when the Spanish came, it became the square routes na puro crisscross, puro ganun lang. That's all square and Romanized. But when the Americans came, we shifted our road systems into circumferential, wherein there's one big circle, Manila, the Rotonda, and it's all lines going towards that. So it's layered. It's a meld of both the Spanish influence and the American influence, and apparently both influences are both patriarchal. So the freedom in the Philippines is now scattered, broken because of that.
Yeah, exactly. Because we've been colonized by a lot of people. Parang yun nga eh, parang it's also deeply rooted in our in our society, in our being, di ba? Na parang yun nga eh, parang we lost essentially the Filipino culture, and then we tried to assimilate the Spanish culture because we didn't want to die. And then we tried to assimilate the American culture because we wanted to get rid of the Spanish culture. Pero it's still deeply ingrained in us. But if you notice, diba, parang our sort of like benchmark for a while was American culture. We wanted to be as American as possible.
Yes.
But now I think there is another shift that's happening. Diba? Parang now we're becoming more Asian centered. Like, give me give me the K-pop, give me the anime, give me the BTS. Diba? So I think that is another shift that's happening. So I guess culturally, we are still working out our identity, but in a way, we're also driving towards building our identity. Pero yun lang, parang I'm just hoping that while we are building our cultural, societal identity, sana whoever is part of the community is also working their best and to the best of their platform and their influence to make better narratives, I guess, and to make better examples of the community. So, I mean, that's for everyone, not just Vice Ganda, but you, me, everyone in this panel, and also everyone who may be listening, and especially those who have the platform to do so. So that's why we're also doing this now. Kasi parang, actually, I learned a lot, right? That's why I like doing these things. But I also hope that it can help other people too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
O yung
Hi
next na
guys!
speak room, yung next na speak room natin, baking naman. At
Martha Stewart, we're coming
Martha
here.
Baking, pero gusto ko ang magbe-bake si Bakemon. Charot.
Ay!
You're baking one with Miss Cookie.
Then,
saya. I like this though. This is very smooth.
For that, yeah.
Super galing. Sabi ko nga kanina nung nag-live kami, nag-expand na talaga yung research development team natin, mga mamas.
Yes.
Napunta na kay Lance Lucas. So, actually guys, sunod-sunod na yan. Ang next yan si Ange na, ang mag-research. Tapos Aki, Maya, Pati, tas ako na yung pinakahuli. Sure lang.
Galing. Sabi. Pero yeah, I'm looking forward to the other installments for this series.
Yeah.
So I guess I had a question, guys. No, since we're talking about representation and films and media, etc. I just wanted to put it out there, and this is for the people in the chat as well. So what is the way forward for LGBTQ plus representation? What do you guys think?
Ako, ang bilis mag-isip, oh my God.
Go, Maki, go!
Kasi, with the key people we have in the community who are actively voicing out kung ano yung mga mas inclusive na ways on how to reshape the culture, which I think is not enough. Parang for me kasi, we should go down to the masses. I'm not saying naman na we are part of quote unquote political elite. It's just that it's parang yung kagaya ng mga sinabi natin in the past 2 hours na what is groundbreaking then would no longer be modern or would no longer be present in our current times. It's just that sana lang we get off Twitter, we get off Facebook, we get off Instagram, we get off YouTube, and really present to the people kung ano yung mga bago, hindi naman siya bago, kung ano yung mga hindi rin siya napapanahon. I cannot really think of the word. Kung ano yung mas inclusive na education o kung ano yung mas tamang. And I don't wanna say mas tama din kasi there's no right or wrong naman on how to tread the fine line. It's just that sana lang we debunk what is so-called politically correct and political elite para mas mapansin tayo at mas marinig ng mga tao yung clamor natin, yung causes natin and advocacies. Because first and foremost, it's one way siguro is to start speaking in Tagalog pero nag-i-English ako. Yun.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Para mas maintindihan ng mga tao kung ano yung nais nating iparating at hindi siya kasi parang feeling ko although we debunk for example smart shaming pero one way to do it is to tell people of what is correct to do pero doing so would be very critical and we should be very careful in doing so because nobody will listen to you if you go out in the street and be all preachy and whatnot, diba?
Yeah.
Parang there's a very tricky way and series of ways on how we can reshape the media and not only media but even the politics of people, the economic side. Because ngayon kasi we cannot really look at media as a one-faceted aspect of a way to live it, diba? Napapasok dyan yung politics, economics, education, parang I live by the quote nga na walang taong matalino sa taong gutom. Diba? Uunahin pa rin ng mga tao yung kumakalam nilang sikmura rather than listen to your stories, listen to what you have to say. Kasi uunahin nila kung meron ba silang ipapakain, kung meron ba silang kakainin bukas, kung meron ba silang, meron ba silang ihahanda sa Pasko, yung mga ganun.
Right.
Diba? Kaya hindi isang paraan lang yung dapat nating gawin. But this is one. It's just that sana lang i-pick up din siya not only by our group, the BBS, but also with other small groups like us, and eventually create a bigger community na mas inclusive, na mas hindi titignan yung pagiging member natin LGBTQIA+ as someone different, but rather a part of the community. Because if we look at may daga ba?
Ano yung kumukuskos?
Natawa ako sa daga.
May daga.
Ano nangyayari, guys?
Yun lang. Parang,
Ayan, nawala.
if we, kasi
Sorry,
if we look
baka
at, for
aso lang yun.
example, if we look at our, ngayon wala pero our annual June celebration, which is Pride.
Yeah.
Parang, no matter how inclusive it is in our own perspective, maraming tao ang paniniwala pa rin nila is, ba't ako makikisali kasi hindi naman ako member ng community?
Totoo
diba?
yan.
Yeah.
Sana lang i-cultivate natin yung perspective na mas open at hindi lang, for example, hindi lang ang Soji Bill ay para sa atin, kundi para sa ating lahat in public talaga. Diba? Yun lang. Ang mahirap na trabaho. Napakalaking trabaho. And I think, realistically speaking, hindi siya matatapos sa lifetime natin, sa generation natin.
Oo, totoo.
Yes,
But,
unfortunately.
Yeah. But sana lang, our generation will leave it for the next generation into something better and something na mas magagawan nila ng paraan on how they would pass it on to the next generation and make it easier for them, and that generation will make it easier for the next generation, and eventually in our dream and so far foresight, makita natin yung community as progressive, na hindi na natin kakailanganin ng mga label as boys love, hindi na natin kakailanganin ng label as pride, because the very reason of pride is to not have pride.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
If I can, siguro I'll, before anyone else, I'd just like to show what a couple of our chatters said. So Jude says, training sana of teachers and development of school curriculum and so on.
Yes.
Yes,
and it's very important.
And I think it's happening already, but it's still a slow progress. They're doing training materials, but to be executed and to be released may take some time. But it's happening.
Sorry, yung gagawing modules ng ANES, mali-mali. Baka pamalitan ng representation dyan sa mga bata.
Yeah. Kasi I think na, di ba, shaping young minds to be able to understand that there are different sexualities and spectrums, but we are all basically human, is I think a very important step to be able to at least shape future societies into being understanding and to just accepting that people are different, diba? Siguro, apart from that, maybe you can also amplify yung gender sensitivity training, diba? Kasi the reason why I mentioned that is because one time when we were training in Tagaytay, we saw that there was a specific, I forgot the name of the government agency, but they were there to train for gender sensitivity. Ayun.
Ooh.
So sana ma-install yun talaga. Like make it a requirement that those types of training happen. Tapos si Alan naman sinasabi niya, oversaturate the media with good LGBT content to the point, and past that, we're in seeing two guys and girls kissing on screen is normal. Yeah. And siguro just to also echo what Mackie said, I'm hoping that in the future, there's no tick box that requires you to say if you're male or female or whatever. I mean, if, for example, you're applying for a job, does it matter if you're male or female? No. I think it may matter if it's medical. Pero alam mo yun, yung parang, yung mga those types of questions, I hope that they evolve in the future. future.
Yeah.
Mama, nakalagay daw sa form, you are you. Yun lang yun.
True.
Stick
You
off mo pa rin.
are not
Ano?
you. Good. Diba? Okay, sige. Who likes to go next? Who would like to go?
Sige, ako na lang. I think, well, ano ba? I think for me, maybe give more opportunities in the media for LGBTQ plus people. I mean, right now I only know a few actors who are openly like gay na, parang medyo stereotype pa rin siya. And even when casting actors in BL series, parang a very few lang talaga yung very open about their sexuality. I mean, I'm not saying na kailangan openly gay kayo, pero sometimes it helps pa rin talaga. Kasi I think
Yeah.
media kasi is the best or has the biggest impact on how public views yung the community. So,
Right.
yun, I think that will help talaga. Right?
Agree.
To be honest, si
Yeah.
Paolo nga lang kilala ko na openly gay na BL actor eh. And
Trot.
yun, and very na-appreciate ko yun sobra. So,
Yay.
yeah.
Yes.
Siguro just to add to what Ange said, this was something that was sort of like a discussion kasi diba in Hollywood, they play a lot of, straight actors play a lot of gay and trans roles. So I think it was Jared Leto's character or role that was most talked about. Kasi sabi ng trans and LGBT community, para here we see a straight actor playing a trans role. And then once they're done playing that role, they go back to being a straight actor. So parang walang continuity yung kwento. So parang that might also put it in other people's heads that the trans people are just pretending or playing a role, and that they can really change.
Agree.
So why not let a trans character play a trans role so that once they're done on the big screen, you see them in real life and they are still trans. Alam mo yan?
Yeah.
But then again, there's a whole other discussion about actors, wages, auditions, and all those things.
Easier said than
Yeah.
done.
Yes, easier said than done. And the US has a lot of, kumbaga, the US already has a pool of trans actors. In the Philippines, we have a scarce pool of trans actors. Nalos, I'll be echoing what Rod Singh said. Parang apply, teach, learn to become an actor. Go into the space you want to, regardless of what gender you are, and enforce your space of where you are in. Parang kung sabi nga ni Thais was, exert your queerness in the space that you are in right now. And I think that's where we should all start. Kasi it should be a multitude. I think it should be a combined effort of education, mass media, the politics even. And the tipping point will be just one president signing that because of all the combined efforts of the masses, media, politics, and the social economic people in the different areas and communities saying, President, please sign this SOGI bill now because we need it now.
Yes.
And then it'll tip the slides already.
Paano yan? Hindi mo pinapirmahan yung SOGI pero napirmahan yung baril. Yung baril-barilan na yan.
Nauna pa nga yung peta.
Bye guys. Char. Ay nako, don't get me started.
Don't get me started. But let's go around media muna.
Mag-sing tayo dito.
Charot na.
I think, I guess just to add to what I said earlier, parang, siguro once we start doing that, like giving opportunities to, like, for example, in BL series, we hire, like, gay actors talaga. Doon lang mabibreak yung stereotype natin about gays in the media na dapat funny ka lang or FM ka lang.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what Angie was saying, in parallel to what Mikey was saying also, maybe we should also reintroduce those characters or those who are really trans, yung mga ganon, who are trans, gay, LGBT in the laylayan or in the masses, in the poverty areas. So they see what it's like. Who are we? What we are? Let them talk in front of them. Or let them show. I'll show you what I am, what my life is like. I'll bring you to that. Parang ganon. And they might be educated about that. And maybe, malay mo, the kids who are there, parang, oh, katulad pala ako ni ate or ni kuya. I just didn't know. That could happen. And that's where education starts. They start to see another idol, not just another vice ganda. Although vice ganda is okay naman, pero relatively, because he's in the stardom, but they see another being. They're introduced to another part of the community that they haven't seen before. Because in mass consumption, we only have vice ganda, kumbaga. And right now, we're having boys love. But it becomes more real and more appealing, more memorable when you meet an actual person in front of you and learn their story, as in they commune with the community that they are in.
Yeah.
And instead of us creating this community, no, we are just this circle, like what Naki was saying, we should widen it and include everyone to that circle and create them as allies or accomplices.
What's sad kasi is those who watch BLs are dominantly members of the community. So, parang it's ang hirap naman to shove it down their throats to watch BL, alam mo, watch BL, watch this content, watch GL and everything. Pero in lang, parang ang hirap buksan, ang hirap tibagin nung pader at buksan nung pinto kung walang taong gustong tumingin sa loob. Sana lang mas madami yung opportunities para tignan ng mga tao yung nasa loob ng community natin as someone na hindi lang yung papasok sa kung anong akala nila sa mga taong nasa loob ng community. Yeah.
Siguro another thing, and this was because of what you guys mentioned, and also yesterday I had the opportunity to watch a discussion with Sina Sky, Sina Zar, Sina Adrian, and Derek Rod and Dolly, and there was also a point of that discussion wherein they talked about who should play what, diba? And I think that as a community, another thing that we can do is to create stories that may be about straight characters, but then allow trans people to play those characters. Alam mo yan? Kasi, di ba, parang what we're doing now currently, I think, is that we are showing trans characters, but then they are shown as trans. Like, yung mga scenes na nagtitape ng katawan, o di ba, parang pinapalit yung chest and all those things. So what if we sort of like play or do stories wherein, okay, let's talk about the cis-hets, but then the characters that are playing them or the actors that are playing them are trans. Alam mo yun? So it's also that kind of thing. And I also don't subscribe to not totally subscribe to the idea that queer characters should play queer roles, because once we start doing that, no, hindi, sa amin lang to, then
we're being put in a box again.
Exactly. And the cis-hets would probably do the same. Oh, okay, sige, edi kami rin lang to. Which defeats our idea, the purpose, and defeats the drive to have people accept us as people and not as trans, not as gay, etc. and so forth. Kasi if straights can play gay characters, then our argument should be, then why couldn't trans people act or play the characters that are cis-het? So alam mo yun, parang there should be give and take and sort of like yun, basically magbigayan at magtulungan tayo.
Yeah, it's like a mix of both message, intent. I think tulad ng sabi, I think the acronym we gave yesterday in the talk was RIM: representation, inspiration, and message. Parang which of those three would represent, inspire, and give a coherent message? If that actor for that role happens to be a trans person, but he could represent, inspire, and give that message, why not? Regardless if that role is cisgender.
Yep.
Correct. Oh, and by the way, another reason why I mentioned that trans actors can play cis-het characters is because it will encourage other trans children or trans kids, I'm not sure what the term is, to dream that they can play a role which, pwede silang makipag-agawan with Cocoy De Santos. Pwede silang makipag-agawan with, oh my God, who is a cis-het actor? Shit. Name a cis-het actor, I can't recall.
Elijah.
Elijah.
Yeah, but nothing else, but like more mainstream. Or okay, yeah, now they can audition for the same role as Jericho Rosales, for example, diba?
Right.
Diba? I mean, it allows other people to see themselves doing the same thing. So if we are able to do that, diba? Parang, wouldn't that be awesome? I think that would be so awesome.
Yeah, I hope they do it in Philippine television or media as well, because they had it in American media. Like what Arky's saying, Neil Patrick Harris is the perfect example in How I Met Your Mother. He plays as a playboy who's having sex with every girl he could find, but he's actually gay. So it's fun. I love that ambiguity. I love that fluidness and the story that he's telling. He can be any. It's a role. It's a character.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Thank you.
Sadly, everything needs
again
funding.
Better said, easier said than done.
Easier said than done. It has to be marketable. We have to prove and change the market as well. Our money, with our money we can do this. We want this.
Yeah. If not marketable, we should have the government support financially yung mga production, diba?
That's right.
Oh God.
Uy, gusto ko to. Imagine a future where someone
very nice
woman plays Darna. Oh my God.
Just go.
Powerful. Yes.
Diba, Rion? Imagine. Oh my God.
Pero actually, feel ko ang problem kasi sa Philippines, may stereotype pa rin sa mga trans woman na gay.
Yes. And I think eventually in the future, they wouldn't even be called trans women or trans men. They would just be men or women.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping we get back to our roots. Because during the pre-Hispanic times, although they were called transformation woman, but there was a term in that language na they were a true woman. Like a trans woman in that language was also considered as a woman. A trans man in that language was also considered as a man. So hopefully we get back to that. Hopefully we could reclaim that again.
Yeah.
Lord Char.
Yes. It's gonna be a long journey. A long journey.
Yes.
Yeah. How about Nico?
Last words.
Wait, inaantok na talaga ako, ma'am. Charla.
Tapusin na natin to.
Let's leave the problem to the next panel next week.
Charot lang. Wait, ano pang next series pala natin nito?
Diba? Yeah, because I think we started with the present, and why don't we go to we started with the past. Why don't we go to the present and get people who are creators in the present?
Yeah. Okay.
Diba?
Cool.
And we can ask that question to the next generation, to the past, to the present people who had their roots from this.
Yeah.
So we can get maybe a director, a writer, a comic book artist. We don't know. Let's see.
Right. We'll never know.
If you guys know anyone, so people in the if you know anyone, you can recommend someone. Let us know.
Let us know.
Diba?
Charot.
Let us know.
Ang tawag dito, overall, Diyos ko, feeling ko bangag na itong sasabihin ko. Char. Anong tawag dito? Ang dami ko sinasabi. Kanina pa ako comment kasi naantok talaga ako. Anong tawag dito? I think overall, if we want to really push for representation, proper representation, I think we need to constantly get into conversations and engage in conversations, so, such as this, di ba? Kasi I don't think, hindi naman sa inaalsa ko yung bangko natin, DBS pero I think no one has ever done this. Yung tipong conscious discussion, di ba? Socially responsible discussion about films and all. I think no one has ever done this, and how we actually dissected everything and fleshed out everything. So ako, parang, wag lang tayong mag-settle dun sa conversation na, ang cute ni ganito ni ganyan sa BLM. And there's nothing wrong with that. The thing is, siguro laliman pa natin ng konti. Di ba? Saan ba ito nanggaling? Kaya nga ang question natin before we went live, no? Parang did we ever lose our narrative for us to claim it back again? Di ba? So, para kasi sa akin, matagal nang meron di ba? Sa Pilipinas. Then, nawala. And if we try to go back to our history, talagang meron tayong pinanggagalingan talaga. And ang galing nung pagkatagpi-tagpi ng mga pelikula, no? Na merong pinagdaanan and then up until the present, right? And siguro ang babaw nung parang napaka-surface nung impact dun sa tao din, 'di ba? Parang pag sinabi nating gay film, hala, may mga sexy ganun. Hindi talaga. May malalim na kwento talaga at the end of the day. Siguro for us to really put forward or push it further yung representation, we have to look at it in different aspects siguro. Parang kung ang usapan natin ay pelikula, no? Parang we have to look at three aspects siguro. One is ideation, di ba? From that moment na gumagawa na ng storya at pagsusulat ng kwento, dun pa lang meron ng representation din di ba? So hindi lang natin pinag-uusapan ang representasyon dun sa actual output or yung content mismo. So dun sa ideation, baka dun natin i-target, like for example, mga writers, even producers. We engage them in conversations all the more, especially those na for commercial lang talaga, di ba? Why don't we engage them into really deep conversations about actual proper representation? Baka yun talaga dapat natin tignan. Pwedeng sa production din, tignan natin. Kung paano ba, kasi sa production pwedeng i-edit out yung mga lines, mga scripts Di ba meron ding responsibility doon, meron ding representation doon, even sa production, even post-production. And lastly, even the impact doon sa tao Di ba? Doon natin ipasok yung representation din. Ano nga ba talagang impact sa tao? Baka for all we know, nag-uusap-usap tayo dito about all these things, di ba? Pero baka sa ibang tao, iba na palang impact, di ba? We'll never know. So ako talaga for us to know all these things, we engage really in a conversation Parang pasukin natin to mga kalye na to, no? Mga eskinita na to na hindi pa na natitignan talaga ng mga tao, di ba?
Yung mga kanal. Charot.
Mga kanal. Kasi tayo ay mga baklang kanal. Charot lang. Ang dami sinabi. Char.
Oy, pero yung batis, baklang batis. Kasi batis yung sa likod ng bahay namin. Sabi ko.
Ayun.
Ayan.
Wala kaming
Well, I think meron din naman na ibang groups na
yes, there are. There are a lot
of conversations. But I would say na parang we also have our own brand talaga.
Yeah.
Like, may papa-PowerPoint pa tayo, ma'am. Sino ba gumagawa nun?
Sorry po.
Gusto mo yun? May papa-PowerPoint talaga tayo, ma'am. Sana walang gumaya. Char!
And with that, we're gonna have a conversation with another group tomorrow. Tama ba?
Yeah.
Yes, we're gonna have a conversation with another group tomorrow, and we're gonna be talking about the present situation. And I think it's for hitting topics, labor exploitation, cyberbullying. What are the others? Stereotyping.
Yeah.
And
I think it was representation too.
I think it was more queer representation.
Yeah.
And it's going to be with our brothers and sisters from the Besh.
Dash.
That's tomorrow at 9:30 tomorrow.
Yay. At 9:30.
And 9:30. And there will
be
be a couple of panelists as well. I think one is a paralegal and was an editor for a magazine. I forgot the other one. Oh, it's Alvin Dakis.
The Soji, the one who talks about Soji a lot. It's Alvin Dakis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I'm expecting to learn a lot, which is why I'm kind of excited.
And we're gonna be joined also with.
I'm just gonna listen.
Yeah, me too. With Besh, it's gonna be also hosted with. I think Nate is gonna be co-hosting it with the Besh.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
So we'll see you there, guys.
Yeah.
And for us, naman, BBS, there are a couple more installments, so just watch out in our social media accounts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is a series, so expect 2 more.
Yes.
And habang may oras pa, I'd like to thank Mikey Inton Campbell for her beautiful doctorate thesis, Bakla ang Silver Screen, and that was beautiful. and I messaged her and thanked her a lot because of that.
Yeah.
Because she allowed us to use her doctorate. And also like to thank Philippine Mythology, History, and the Art. At Twitter, they are Dayaoism. That's where I got all of the tidbits about the Philippine folklore and the Aswang project as well. That's where I got about history on the Babaylan, on the Philippine mythology, and all that stuff. And if you check out Dayaoism too, the Twitter account has a Pride Twitter post, and you'd find most of what I said there too. And that has references in case you're looking.
Lance, anong kulay ito? Itong sa PowerPoint.
Orange?
Orange. Lang, gusto ko lang tanong. Di ba? Peach? Ay, ito yung di ba yung may debate dun sa Facebook kung blue ba siya or gold?
Blue or correct. It's obviously blue. Mag-away tayo dito. By the way, guys, salamat sa thesis defense na to. Nag-enjoy ako. May nagsabi kasi, sino ba?
Si Allen kasi.
Allen.
Group project.
Ay, naku, Allen. Maghanda ka na, Allen.
Tangerine
lang
din
sabi ko.
So, as a thesis defense, I would like to thank my professors in college. Professor Dorothy Jose, Professor Jim.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Alala ko pa, Diyos ko. And my advisor, si Tita Nit. Yun ang tawag namin sa kanya, si Tita Nits. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Wala na. Tulugan na. Tapusin na
Masaya.
natin. Pero guys, super thank you so much.
Thank
you. Lance for doing the video.
Thanks, Lucas. Yes.
Yes, and Ange for joining us. Yes.
Of course.
A woman's perspective. You are our Baday Land.
Yes.
I'm a babae.
You are the ba and the bakla for us. So yeah.
And Naki for the social civic lesson. Yes, sorry, Nico. Go.
Kung may babaylan, sino yung yawa? Charot lang.
Sige, ako na lang.
Ako na rin, pwede mag-iyawa.
Ako na lang, gusto ko mag-iyawa.
Ikaw yung yawa, ako yung peace teacher. And Nico for the tech. Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.
And for wrapping up and everything. Yes.
Random na nung dulo nung live. We would like to thank everyone for watching. Thank you so much for joining us for the nearly 3
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
Everyone participated in the chat.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Everyone.
Welcome to 3R Spectrum. Next week again.
Yep.
Yes,
so guys,
thank you guys.
Thank you.
And we'll see you tomorrow muna on the bench. Well. And then we'll see you next week for the next installments of the Spectrum. So happy, oh my God, it's so weird to say this. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Again. Happy Pride.
All right. Bye, guys.
Ciao.